And resolve that. How's that? Can you hear me now? Okay, we did it. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. So, if that's the case, then that's better, Robin. You can hear me? You can hear me? Did we solve it? Yes, perfect. We solved it. Okay, well, if that's the case, then we're streaming today. We're streaming today. My dog's right down here, kind of barking away. He doesn't get what's going on, just like I don't get what's going on. But we're streaming today. All right, we did it. We fixed the sound. We made it. Thank God you were here, Robin. You solved all my problems, and we got the stream off to a rousing opening. So today, I really highly recommend everybody go check out Chris Hedges' newest one. He just did Chris Hedges' Sadism. His newest one is American Sadism. As you can see, it's streamed 20 hours ago. I literally watched it like right after it was streamed. If you don't know Chris Hedges, or you're just sort of getting into this kind of stuff, this is a really great start. Really, Chris Hedges lays it out in a way that's like you gotta pay attention. You can't not pay attention. I was thinking maybe I'd play it on today's stream, but honestly, I wanted to just chat today because this is my stream and I wanna do it. I wanna do it. Kind of hoping somebody pops in. Last week we had quite a few people coming in to try to challenge me. I rather liked that, honestly. Coming in and these guys coming in and be like, capitalism's the best system that's ever a system, and me just be like, oh boy, buddy. Let's have a talk about that. Also worth talking about the heat. Holy cow! I don't know how it's going for the rest of you, but it's a heat wave right now. Hey Vince, how you doing today? We're having a heat wave. Heat wave burning in my heart. It's hot day to day. I don't have AC, so I'm on the fans. I hope the sound is okay on that. I've got like literally 3 fans going on around this. Yes, it is unreal hot. I'm looking down here. It says 31 degrees right now. It's supposed to get hotter than that, and apparently it's the West Coast. The West Coast is what's going to really eat it. There's going to be big. Well, what does that mean? So as always, any excuse to open a map. Any excuse to open a map. Any excuse to open the map. Here we are. We're looking at a map. Yeah, oh my God. Biden bombed Syria and Iraq yesterday. Yay, democracy. I mean, like, what are they bombing? Like, what is there left to bomb? This is my kind of thing. Like, eventually there does come a point where, like what happened to the Americans in Vietnam. Like, the Americans grounded all of their bomber jets because they were like, we just ran out of targets. We don't have anything. There's nothing left to bomb. So, like, isn't it getting to that point now in Iran and Iraq and Syria? Like, what's left? We really need the Green New Democratic Deal right now. Yeah, that name. They're just using these names as propaganda pieces. Like these New Deal is becoming like it's what capitalists do, right? They just absorb and co-opt everything around them, and they know that there's this sort of spirit of anti-capitalism going around, and they know that people are demanding at least reform, right? I'm not seeing anybody outside of like your hard right fringe actors who are saying that the system doesn't need to be reformed at the very least, and so they're trying to co-opt like New Deal and this kind of stuff and pretend as though that's what Biden is like. they're propping Biden up to be this like New Deal Democrat, and he's absolutely not. Like, he's absolutely not. None of that New Deal stuff is going to happen under Biden. Like, it's a total farce. They can spend billions of dollars bombing dust piles in Iraq and Syria. Oh yeah, same story with the ONDP though. Like, I mean, the Jagmeet Singh, what's the phrase he's using? He's saying something like Green New Deal, right? Like, he's saying something like that, walking around doing that kind of. So New Deal, like even the people who I'm gonna probably be voting for and supporting, I'm like, come on guys, it's like the New Deal was a reformation of capitalism down to the bone. Like, the capitalists gave away literally everything except the means of production, right? They capitulated a ton of power to unions, to the communists and the socialists. Like, literally, like, imagine living in a society where there is no employment insurance. Like, it doesn't exist. Literally, it is, if you can't get a job for capitalists, you just die. That's the arrangement, right? So you're talking about a dramatic restructuring of how the society works and how the society functions in significant and serious ways underneath underneath Roosevelt's administration, right? Like, this is a major restructuring of how the society works, and that is just not on the cards with Biden. But and the ONDP and Jagmeet Singh, like, I genuinely believe that Jagmeet Singh, if he were to become the Prime Minister of Canada, would suddenly like restructure the society in significant ways. And you're really hitting on it here, Vince. First of all, thank you for the compliment on the video. That was really banging around in my head all day this week, and I was really thinking of chopping that video up and doing like some edits and things like this. But then I did the video, and it's just like, no, it's very straightforward. Like, you're right. He just needs to start talking about the basic income more. Like, I don't understand why. Like, I don't get this position that he's taking. Like, why is it that he is putting this very popular idea, not only popular in his own party, but popular within the Liberal Party? Why is he taking this and just kind of, it seems like it's on the back burner. It's just not part of the conversation as far, and this is exactly the problem, right? Is that while he is running to the left sort of traditionally, like, you take a look at his ads, right? You take a look at some of his ads, and you can see that he's positioning himself. If I do all this, am I gonna? Where did I see? Do I have that ready to go? I don't think I do. But like, if you find some of Jagmeet Singh's ads, like 10 years ago, his ads would have been insanely would have been considered like very, very leftist, right? Like 10 years ago. And this is sort of my thing with the NDP, is that it feels like they're always kind of just catching up with the populace, while the Liberals are like right on with the populace in terms of their rhetoric. But like, they really are pushing on like solar energy. Well, and you got to remember, it's just starting, right? It's just starting. So, from what I've been seeing coming out of the Ontario NDP, I'm a bit more like, yeah, like, I think they're on it. I'm just worried that this basic income thing is gonna slide through people. It's gonna slide through people's fingers, right? And meanwhile, we've got like homeless people still living in tent cities, right? We've got precarious work everywhere. We've got a culture that's obviously turning against the capitalists, because we're starting to realize what the capitalists are actually spending their money on, right? This is the big thing. This is actually the thing that, hey Chris, how you doing today? Oh, and hey Ward, I didn't actually say hi to you. Thanks for popping in, guys. The thing that I really dislike about what's happening in the national conversation of like we're not like it's tough for employers to find workers at the moment, and the commentary is, oh well, these employers just need to pay these workers better, right? And like I keep kind of hitting on, look man, like it doesn't really matter how much you pay if the capitalist society is structured so that the people at the very top of it are like these sociopathic pedophiles who go to like Jeffrey Epstein's island, right? Like there is a significant problem with a culture that looks at the billionaire class doing these outrageous like things that we would like read in a history book and be like, oh, these people are demonically evil, objectively, if you are a person going to Jeffrey Epstein's island, you are evil, right? Like there is overt objective evil in the world, and there it is. And not only were former presidents going to this island, but billionaires, Steven Pinker was going to this island, right? Like all of the people who are supposed to be like the stalwarts of Western values and like the stalwarts of Western institutions, it turns out that they're just pedophile rapists, right? And then you're going to turn around and tell me, yeah, you got to flip burgers for your whole life for a subsistence wage so that these guys can go have sex with little girls on an island? No. And then they're like, oh, I guess we'll pay you a little bit more. Still no, dude. Still no. Like, I mean, I completely understand why we are not having this conversation and why we're not actually talking about this issue and why we're not talking about it in a large meta sense. Because the second you start talking about this issue, then the idea that workers are basically checking out of a system that rewards these pedophiles and rapists, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense why we're not having this conversation and why the capitalists are just going to be like, I guess we got to raise wages so that we can still keep going to Jeffrey Epstein's sex island, right? Like it's to me it's a real black and white. Like why would I ever want to participate in this? Why would I ever want to participate in this? It'd be like if my job was turning a crank in a system, and then I found out that the only reason the system exists is to like murder kittens. I'm like, no, why? You couldn't pay me any amount of money to like turn this crank. Why do people? But like, there's a really excellent book, in my view, that sort of explains some of this, called The Banality of Evil. And I actually expect that to come up. Book, come on. So The Banality of Evil was a book that got written after World War II, and it was all of the they did interviews with all of the people working in the concentration camps in Germany post World War II, and the kind of horrifying conclusion they came out with was that the people working in the concentration camp system weren't these like Machiavellian evil like overlords or anything. They weren't these like super powered megalomaniacs, right? They were just like normal people, just kind of pulling levers and marking books and stuff like that. They were clerks largely, and like with that kind of banality that like any bureaucrat or any clerk would have doing this task. And they would like and they would get asked like, well, why did you do this? And they'd be like, well, this is how you got ahead. This is how you got the best pay and you got the most prestige. You do a stint here and then you get some better post somewhere else. So this is the reward system. And like when I was growing up, there was this narrative that was like, oh, and if you didn't do it, like they said, go work at the concentration camps and they're fascists and Nazis, and if you said no, you'd get shot. And like, no, if you said no, they just put you at a different post. But that post would, you know, you would just kind of get forgotten right? So you wouldn't advance. You'd just end up at that post, continuing work for the Nazi regime, but not directly like pulling the levers and loading cargo trains full of Jews, that kind of thing. And the conclusion of the report is just like, yeah, it was all done with this kind of like banal, like normalcy, where people were just like, oh yeah, that's just what you got to do. That's just how you get ahead, right? And because they had isolated all of the people, and because you couldn't see the horror show on this like large sort of scale, everybody could kind of live with themselves while they were going about this, horrific thing. And I take a look at Jeffrey Epstein's island, and I'm like, that's the same kind of stuff. Like, that's the same kind of stuff. And I just feel there's a lot of people in America that are like, all of our activities and everything we are doing is resulting in like destroying this region. As recently as yesterday, I kind of tuned out of the news. I try to tune out of the news over the weekend for my own mental health. And I'm just hearing from Vince now saying that Biden is now, I knew that he was going to, because right on Friday he shut down a bunch of news sources in Syria, huge amount of just blacking out information, blacking out websites, things like this, which is common to do right before you're going to launch an invasion. You don't want your enemies to know what's going on, right? You don't want your enemy, that's that classic kind of warrior's position, right? You want to obfuscate and make things difficult. So you black them out, and then you start bombing in Syria and Iraq, and it's just like, why? Okay, so why? Like, why? What is this achieving? What is it doing? What kind of building is it doing? Like, what kind of world is it building? Hey, Demand Better. Yes, please. A good point, Demand Better. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell the world. Give me some money. Give me some money. Send $1 my way. If you're already a donator, maybe think about upping your donation. $1 extra, right? Easy to do. And the because I know I'm being suppressed in the algorithm. I for sure am. I'm pretty aware of it. All the numbers indicate that that's the case. That I'm pretty sure that when Biden came out with his laundry list of like anti-capitalist and all that kind of stuff, of defining all of this as terrorism, that got us deprioritized in the algorithm as well. Wouldn't be surprised to figure that out. So we are getting deprioritized without a doubt. Chris Hedges talks about this, which again, if you haven't seen Chris Hedges, his newest one, American Sadism, he's really, really, really nailing it on the head. I just said that I try to tune out of the news over the weekend, but when Chris Hedges comes out with something, I always pay attention. So, this one, American Sadism, it's really starting to cut. Like, the thing that's brilliant about Hedges is that he is, he's so well read, and he's so astute, and he's so intelligent, and his linking of the political sphere to the humanities, his observation that the humanities are being crushed under capitalism, and that there's a reason why the humanities are getting crushed under capitalism, and that reason is very simply because if you understand human nature, then things like trickle-down economics become an absurdism on the face of it. And I mean, we're to a point now with that narrative where it's you can't maintain this. Like, if you actually meet somebody who still thinks the trickle-down economics line works, you are talking to somebody who is overtly delusional. Like, to the point where I'm starting to wonder if we can start classifying it as a mental illness. Not as a way to demonize or deflect or dismiss, but as a way to be like, seriously, like, you are still supporting a system that, and of course the people who would believe this kind of stuff also would deny the existence of climate change, also would like be in this heavily delusional space. And it really does make me start wondering, like, is this like a mental illness? Like, is there some kind of thing that exists inside of the human brain that says I need to commit suicide and destroy everyone around me 100%? And Chris Hedges touches on that a lot in his speech here. Oh, yeah, good to see some attempts at organization in the chat. Always good to see. Always good to see. Jody Wilson Raybold, today's politics are toxic to Indigenous women. I mean, I would say that Canadian politics has always been toxic to Indigenous women, Indigenous people across the board, but Indigenous women certainly. I can't imagine what this must be like. Like, here we've got a tweet. It says, a hospital is trying to charge me $4,000 for an ultrasound. Is that normal? And the response is, yes, you live in America. Like, imagine being so disconnected from the system and so disconnected from the institutions around you that it's only the minute you need to use them that you discover how invalid they are, right? Like, you got an ultrasound and they're trying to charge you $4,000. Like, of course they are. Of course they are. And of course, we've got, right now in America, there's this enormous fight against teaching what's called critical race theory, or critical racist theory, according to the sign here, which ultimately is just an attempt to teach kids about the history of racism, the history of black slavery, the history of like Jim Crow legislation, in an effort to prevent those sorts of actions from happening again. And people are protesting it, which I think this tells you, like, not everything you need to know about America, but certainly something. Like, you're telling me that the thing that's getting you out onto the street with signs is not the wholesale abandonment of the populace, is not homelessness, is not the fact that housing prices have lost their minds, is not the fact that rent is like doubling year over year. Like, it's not well, I shouldn't say doubling, but going up like enormous percentages year over year. And it's none of that. The thing that's getting you to the streets and holding up signs is we're teaching kids about the history of racism in our country, and I don't like it. Like, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Oh yeah, okay. Yikes. Like, that's a big yikes. That's a big yikes. Oh, we got Che Guevara on the golf course here. Love to see it. Love to see it. July 1st is not a day for celebrations. This is the Communist Party of Canada's statement. I have tried reaching out to the Communist Party of Canada several times now. I get nothing back. So I don't actually know who these guys are, right? They are connecting here to Idle No More, which Idle No More is a really powerful organization. Hey John, thank you so much. Thanks so much, bud. Good to see you. Good to see you. But this narrative that's going around, right? July 1st is not a day for celebrations. How this is starting to pick up, and it's starting to become a more serious national conversation, which I like. I'm glad to see. Of course, the typical actors are taking the typical positions, right? And I suppose what I'm coming to with this is, like, there's no surprises. Everybody is basically saying exactly what you would expect them to say. O'Toole is essentially like, we need to be celebrating July 1st. The Liberals are largely just being silent about it and kind of hoping that it all goes away and that July 1st will come and go and there'll be like no kind of further commentary on it. My position ultimately is like, Treasy, don't know if I've ever seen you in here, Treasy. Good to see you. Thanks for popping in. The Marxist-Leninist Party is another one I wish I knew more about. I think they had a really well-written platform on their site last federal election. Oh yeah, okay. That's really good. I do wish that, like, I think that using, like, communist is good for the general populace. I think that they can kind of get on board with that. It's when we start getting into, like, the Marxist-Leninist stuff that people get a little bit like, what the hell am I even looking at? I don't really understand it, and it's like this really daunting conversation. Anyway, the my position on the July 4th, the July 1st thing is like we are exhuming, like, mass graves at the moment. We definitely are still going to engage in celebrations. Like, people are going to launch fireworks. All of that is going to happen because there's too much momentum. Honestly, like, there's just too much momentum. People have these expectations. The conversation we've been having nationally is not serious enough. But I really do like that. The indigenous population and leftists generally are starting to point to July 1st, to Canada Day, and say this needs to be a day of mourning. Like, this is not what is it exactly that we're celebrating? Like, what is it exactly that we're celebrating here? I feel like going after Canada Day is a smart move. Because it attaches these issues that we have to deal with. If we ever want to actually change the way that we act in the world as a nation and as a people, we have to confront the actions of our past. We have to learn from the actions of our past. And by embedding that demand into Canada Day, right, it creates a tradition upon a tradition, which is a smart cultural move. I mean, the Christians did this, right? That they took their own lore and their own stories and they attached it to the cultures that they were moving into. They attached it to their already established traditions. And so I think this is a smart move for the indigenous population and for leftists generally, that every year Canada Day is going to come, and with that is going to come this sort of upswell of talking about this conversation and talking about the nature of what Canada Day should look like, right? Because, like, growing up for me, Canada Day was always just sort of like mini America, right? It was always just like, Canada, yeah, fireworks, like, we're just like, you know, marching forward with sort of an idiotic, like, we're the best in the world, and then, like, you start to actually research the history of Canada, and you're like, oh, I mean, I guess it's okay to be, like, proud of your culture, I guess, or, like, you're trying to, and, like, and let's be really straight, like, I feel like there is a heavy militarization of our celebrations surrounding Canada Day, right? Fireworks themselves are like a military celebration, right? Explosives going off in the sky, bright colors, like all that kind of stuff. There's always, like, some kind of, like, jet show, like air show, that kind of thing to like, and recently, especially, anytime I go to these celebrations, I end up walking away being like, this is really creepy. Like, it's really creepy that we are celebrating the fact that there is, like, a military air supremacy above us. And I understand, I guess, if you look at it and you be like, oh no, but those guys are there for our protection. We're, like, celebrating and acknowledging, like, how they protect us. And I'm like, I mean, I'm a communist. I don't feel necessarily protected. Like, I don't look up in the sky and see these jets flying across and think to myself, those guys, yeah, they'll run to my defense, certainly. That's what's going to happen. Yeah, and demand better, it's absolutely right. It's unfortunate how well Red Scare tactics still work against communist parties. It's starting to turn. I saw a poll recently. I think it might actually be in the Discord. Yes, majority of Gen Z Americans hold negative view of capitalism. Now that's in America, mind you, but I suspect it transfers to here in Canada. So if you're considered a Gen Z, you've got it's more likely that you have a negative view of capitalism and a positive view. And then as you go up, like the millennials are still basically 50-50 split. And of course, Gen X and the boomers are tipped over on the other side. But it's less dramatic than you think. That like it's not like 80% of the boomers are like sitting here being like, yeah, capitalism's the greatest. It's more like 60%, right? So the percentages are not that insane or that crazy. And so the tide is turning, right? The tide is turning, and the Red Scare tactics, though, definitely there is definitely a large section of the population who literally still thinks that the communism killed lots of people angle. Like there's a reason why Stephen Harper funds the like victims of communism, right? And why the Trudeau Liberals also fund the victims of communism, which is just like the absolute stupidest, most Red Scare propaganda outlet that you can find, right? Like it's you can't get dumber than that. But the Red Scare tactics are it's starting to go the way of reefer madness, right? Where people are just like, really, like, really the communists did bad things. Well, what? Like, what did they do? And then you start like talking to like one of the things I've really noticed, and I've seen this happen, is that the capitalists start like really banging on the stuff. It's always the famines. It's always the famines they bang on, and like. I've seen people like listening and being like, "Oh, so there was a famine. Oh, okay." Like, "Oh, well," and they did something like that kind of augmented it. Oh, okay. And you can really see in people's heads how they're like, "Is that worse than like an endless war where you decimate? Like, is that worse than an endless war where you decimate Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, right? Where you maintain a genocide in Yemen and Palestine? Like, is that significantly worse?" And so people are just like not really taking that critique seriously any longer, because even if, and this has become like my strategy talking to these to capitalists when they start using this line, right? It is to be like, look, dude, if I took every single atrocity that you attribute to communism, and I piled it up against every single atrocity that generates out of capitalism, it would be no contest who loses here. It wouldn't even be close, right? You want to take Mao's famine. You want to take Stalin's famine, right? Okay, we'll put them in a little thing. Oh yeah, okay, the gulags, right? Oh yeah, political dissidents, all that kind of stuff. On and on and on and on and on and on it goes. Put it all up into a pile. I won't even debate it. Right? And of course you could. Because there are lots of things and nuance and things to point out, but all of that, right? Okay, so World War I, World War II, the Civil War, slavery, the genocide of the First Nations people, the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? And that doesn't even get past World War II, right? Like all of that I just listed off there, just rattled all that off. That's World War II. And then you get into like, okay, well, Cambodia, Vietnam, right? All of the war throughout this region, the absolute genocide that occurred in Indonesia because of the Americans, and then we get into the Middle East, right? And the Middle Eastern wars, like, under what circumstances am I supposed to look at communism and be like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in the world? I'm like, really? Where's the what culture did Russia enslave and commit a genocide against? And like people, like guys, like there was entire civilizations that existed in South America. The Incans, the Mayans, the Aztecs, right? These are civilizations, right, that existed in South America for thousands of years, that capitalists came in and eradicated. Like South America was purged, completely. Like, blank slate, all of that is gone. And we stole all their resources, and we stole all their gold, and we stole everything that they had. And everything that exists in South America only exists there because the colonizers who went in and eradicated several civilizations worth of people couldn't pry it up from the ground or didn't see the value of taking it, right? And I'm supposed to turn around and be like, oh, there was a famine in Soviet Union, so communism's bad. Like, come on. Like, come on. Like, what are you, a child? And, like, when you start digging in on that, like, are you a child? The answer is always yes. That these people are children. Like, they just never actually grew up. They didn't get past 12. That, like, puberty started, and then their mental development stopped. And they just kind of had to deal with puberty. And then they're on this, like, rail cart of capital that is just jamming them into a job, right? And the whole time their life is just like, okay, go get the job, get the thing. Okay, we're on these rails, let's go get, okay, so now I got the job. Okay, so now I'm working the job. If I do badly, I get fired, and that means homelessness. Okay, keep going. And then they're 40 or 60 or whatever, and you're like, oh, hey, did you know that Soviet Russia improved the life expectancy of its citizens more dramatically than any other nation ever in the history of man, and that they were the first into spaceflight? And they immediately are just like, yeah, but there was one famine one time, so the whole project is failure, right? You're a child. You never grew up. Like, you just never actually took the time to grow up, because capitalism doesn't reward you for that. Capitalism doesn't reward you for being an adult. It rewards you for being a worker. That's and as we've established previously, capitalism is fine with enslaving children and putting children into mines, right? Like, where's the child slavery throughout China and Russia? Like, where's the communist child slaves, right? I can show you plenty of British. Like, just go read the works of Dickens. Like, go read Oliver Twist, right? Like, that's what was going on in capitalist Europe. They were taking kids, putting them into factories, putting them down mine shafts, right? Take a look at what's going on throughout Africa right now. Like, right now. Like, Elon Musk's lithium mines and cobalt mines, right? Yeah, they're jamming kids in those mines. Like, that's why I'm, like, trying to not buy anything anymore. Like, I'm really trying. I'm really, really trying. Like, I don't want to get more computers. I don't want to get more technology. I don't want to get any more of this, because lots of the components and lots of the pieces are literally being mined by, like, 8-year-olds being jammed into these mines. And unfortunately, like, this is the world that we've erected, and we have to, if we want to participate in it at all, this is how we have to do it. Bad Mouse Productions made a good video of that. Let's go take a look at Bad Mouse Productions. Bad Mouse Productions. Oh, here we go. Calculating capitalism's death toll. Oh, they've got another thing by the Paris Commune. Okay, I like these guys already. I'm not gonna... Oh, it's only 9 minutes.
Do you think that you can transform what we have already now into some kind of utopia? You're dangerous, because that is how the world works, and utopians have been more dangerous than any other people for the last 100 years. That's for sure. Like, there's all sorts of things wrong with Western society. Always, and there always will be. But compared to 85 to 90% of the rest of the planet, this is bloody heaven.
Like, that was just Jordan Peterson with, like, a nice little echo effect on it, right? And it's like, the farther I get away from Peterson and the farther I get into communism, the more I really do think that, like, Peterson is what I am talking about when I'm saying that there are just people who never grew up, right? That like there's the one of the things that's going to come up on Reddit, so I might as well get into it right now, is 40% of Canadians, here we go, nearly 40% of Canadians believe immigration target is too high, right? And when you talk to people who are against immigration into Canada, or when you talk about immigration generally, there's this like total vacuum of understanding of what's actually happening in the world, right? That like everybody is just living in their insular little bubble, and they're thinking like, oh, we here in Canada have developed so much, and we've created so much wealth for ourselves because of capitalism, that other people in other nations in which we are not participating in any way, who are disconnected or separate from us, they want to come into our beautiful, wonderful country, right? And then you actually point out and say like, yeah, like, you know, we got like an upswell of Syrian refugees. Yeah, weird how that happened right after Westerners destroyed Syria, right? Oh, we got a whole bunch of Iraqi refugees. Oh, weird how that happened right after we destroyed Iraq, right? Like, oh, we got a whole bunch of Venezuelan refugees. Weird that happened right after we put heavy sanctions on Venezuela and destroyed the country, right? Like, yeah, of course we've got refugees coming into Canada because we're the place that's not being bombed. Like, we're the place that's not being throttled or dominated or controlled. Well, I mean, we are being throttled, dominated, controlled for capitalists, but, you know, we still have, like, clean drinking water. We still have, like, an agricultural system, because the capitalists are well aware that if they were to inflict what they inflict on the rest of the world on us, that there would be revolution in a more, a closer to the bone kind of a way. But people don't have that kind of understanding of what's going on in the world. So they like legitimate, like you, and so if you actually say this to people, you can see how there's like a mathematical formula that goes on in their brain with figures and statistics that they have never encountered in their life. That like, oh, I thought people were coming to Canada because we were so good. It's like, well, yeah, we are, but we've also rendered the rest of the world a complete and total shithole, right? And because, like, lots of European nations are starting to close their borders, right? Which makes sense, because, like, I'm not trying to demonize this sort of thing. Like, it's a significant problem that the Europeans are dealing with, like this millions and millions of people attempting to flee the ongoing permanent war, right? That is never ending. So they're trying to flee up into Europe, and Europe just, it doesn't want to be overwhelmed, right? And it would be overwhelming to do that, right? To have that kind of happen. And of course, you got lots and lots of refugees finding their way into China, and then when China turns around and tries to help these people or do something about it, we could call it a genocide, right? Like that's Westerners all the way. And so it simultaneously makes sense that there's 40% of Canadians that believe the immigration target is too high. But that's because even the people who are in support of immigration don't make the connection that, like, the people who are immigrating to Canada are immigrating from places that we had a hand in destroying, right? That, like, this is like a capitalist strategy, right? So go to a place like Venezuela, destroy it, have a whole bunch of poor Venezuelans flee up into the United States and Canada. Well, there's your cheap labor, right? There's your cheap exploitable labor that you can get, right? That the educated populace, the populace that you educated, doesn't necessarily want to spend their lives making your lattes for the rest of their life, right? So you need to find ways to plunge their wages lower, make things harder for them. And the way to do that is to destroy a country and have a bunch of people immigrate there, right? And simultaneously, it also helps smooth out Canada's declining population, because we can't have kids, right? Like, I mean, we're so fucking busy and we're so exhausted. Everybody I know who has kids, their life is over, right? Their life is over. That they spend all their time working for capitalists, and then they get like brief little windows where they actually get to live life with their children. And every time I see it, it's like this. It's just, okay, we gotta. It's like they're constantly in motion. So you got these kids that are basically just being like woken up, jammed into a school system, right? So there's like this perpetual machine that's always moving, and then and so they're babysat and taught something, one suspects, at these schools, and then they get jammed into. I like that onward to so gaze too long into the come on man, and the come on man gazes back into you. Come on man is like the greatest Bidenism ever. I also like Jack. I like how he says Jack all the time, right? Come on, man, come on, Jack. I love it. He's the nice face of empire. Okay. You guys need to see what I'm dealing with right now. You need to see what I'm dealing with. He doesn't like being picked up, but I picked him up anyway. Oh, I know, buddy. I know. See how he's panting away? Yeah, hot day today, eh, bud? Hot day today. Oh, big hack. Yeah. My good little boy. If you're listening right now, there's a pug on my lap, so maybe you want to have a view. Oh. Yeah, I love you too, buddy. I love you too. Yeah, the heat is really killing him. Pugs have you see his snout, eh? You see how it's like all in, right? Their sinuses are very, very small, and so he can overheat like really, really easily. And you see how he's doing everything he can. He doesn't necessarily like being on my lap here, but okay. We'll put you back down, buddy. What a good boy. Okay, you're going down. Good boy, buddy. Good boy. Thanks for showing. Thanks for an appearance. What a good boy. The humidity was only 90 when you went for a walk this morning. Wow, it went down, bud. It went down. Yeah, you're in Georgia, right? Like, yeah, that's like swamp country, bud. Like that's like, ooh. Like I can't imagine what it would be like to be in the southern states, right? Or frig, like even down here, like Mexico, like all this kind of stuff. Like the heat wave that's going to be hitting the West Coast. It's apparently like it's going to be record heat. Like it's literally we have never experienced heat this high, and so you're semi-tropical. Oh yeah, well, and as climate change goes forward, maybe it'll turn into actually tropical, right? We'll see. But this heat wave, I am very, very deeply concerned about the desertification of the western United States. But also up into Canada, like my homeland here. Like this light green that you're seeing here, right, represents like arable land that you can actually farm and use. But all of this like sandy stuff is starting to expand, and if you actually take a look at like a year over year, 117.1 degrees in Portland right now. So 117 Fahrenheit to Celsius. Oh, 47. Holy crike. That's Portland is in Oregon. Yeah, Portland, Oregon. So that's like right here. Holy cow. That's hard. That's hard to accept, man. Like 47 degrees. Like that's hard to accept that Portland is going through that kind of heat, and it's just starting. Like that's the thing that like I keep reminding myself. Like I'm a night owl, so I stay up through the night and then go to sleep in the early morning. But because I don't have any AC or anything like this, that means that I'm sleeping in the heat, and and so I'm gonna have to readjust things because sleep through the night, sleep when it's cool. That's how you get a good sleep. Because this heat is sapping me, and it's nothing like, for reference, the hottest temperature ever recorded in Las Vegas in the Mojave Desert is 117. Jesus Christ, dude. Jesus Christ. Was a glacier melt warning on the Weather Network? Yeah, that's gonna happen. It's and it's gonna be soon. Like it's gonna be, and when I say soon, I mean within a decade, where the rising waters are going to become serious. Like right now, they're sort of like there isn't a big like when that building collapse happened, right? Like the building collapse in Miami that occurred. If you don't know about it, right? There was a building collapse in Miami, and it was for exactly the reasons you expect, right? Capitalists don't maintain or upkeep anything, and so the infrastructure was crumbling. There was nobody actually coming in to take a look at the infrastructure and be like, hey, and it's not like there weren't any signs. People were like, hey, there's cracks forming. There are more and more reports coming out of people being like, yeah, there were cracks forming, like this kind of stuff was happening, but because the capitalist system is a failure and it doesn't work, nobody actually comes to check this out. And certainly the capitalists aren't going to spend any money to do anything about it, right? So the building collapses, kills several people. Trump offering to buy Greenland is starting to make sense. Yeah. And like you take a look at a map, right? Miami is a great place to be talking about right now. Miami is a great place to be talking about because if any city in America gets completely fucked over by the water rising, it's Miami. And the only reason why the corporate media and the capitalists aren't completely pounding on the pulpit about it is because there aren't these like really great pictures, right? Like because we're largely ruled by children who didn't grow up, who think that their system is the best. Like if you think your system's the best and you're like a little boy that never actually grew up, then you don't need to fix anything. There's no reform necessary, right? Like you're just a little boy going around, I'm the president of the United States, right? Like, and you're just like, I'm the greatest person ever, right? And it's the same thing with somebody like Biden, who again is just like a kind of a little boy who never actually grew up. He's never had to work a day in his life. He's never been confronted with what it is to actually live in the society in meaningful ways. So he's always been like in this cabal of wealthy oligarchs and billionaires. Like that's Joe Biden to a T. So he literally never grew up, and until it becomes so apparent and so obvious to Americans. And the way it's going to become apparent and obvious to Americans is when Miami gets wiped out, right? And it's very difficult for me to, like, you take a look at something like this, and you're like, oh, okay, so this creates sparks and this creates conversation. Well, wait until Miami's underwater, man. Like, all of this is low-lying territory. All of this is low-lying territory. Like, the water level goes up a foot, it's underwater. Like what's likely to happen is that you'll have like this enormous heat wave, right? And one of the things that like the weather gets more erratic and the weather gets more extreme. Hey Ruth, how you doing? Also, hey DM, I didn't say hi to you when you came in. If Trump does, I'm moving there. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, buy Disney World, like buy all that, right? Like and the idea that nobody's doing anything about it. Like that's the thing that really kills me. Like what are we doing up here in Canada? We're like banning straws, right? Single-use plastics. The kind of thing that like if we had it done like 20 years ago, I would have been like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, they're well, and I think the biggest crime that my generation is going to look back on it is the environmental movements that happened throughout the 90s and 2000s, where we were conned completely, and it was a complete grift, it was a complete con by corporate America into believing that there was an environmentalist movement that had kind of taken over, and that the environmentalist movement was actually moving forward, and was actually doing projects and actually doing things that were actually helping. And that effectively put large sections of you know your students and your well-educated, your people who are getting educated, right, coming up, essentially put them to sleep on the issue because they were led to believe that something was being done. And now here we are, 2020, and the warnings are over, right? Like this is I saw a comment on someone had put the comment. We're past the warnings, right? The warnings are over. Now it's time to deal with the consequences. And that's where we're at now. That even if we were to like pull the trigger and completely shut down our carbon and completely shut this down and start to reverse it, we would still be affected in dramatic ways. And so what's likely to happen, right, is that this heat wave that's coming, well, what does that mean? It means that you're going to have a ton of evaporation. You're going to have a ton of like moisture and everything getting sucked out of the earth, right? Because it's a cyclical system, and this, we all learned this in grade 8. Like this is grade 8 science, right? So you have this intense heat wave that's going to suck all the moisture up out of the earth, right, into the sky. And what's that going to result in? It's going to result in a massive hurricane, right? That the hurricanes that come are going to get more dramatic and more ridiculous. And where's the hurricanes usually show up? Bermuda Triangle. And so one of these years, right, one of these times, we're going to end up with this massive, massive, massive hurricane. And then Google Maps is going to come and do the satellite in Florida. This whole section of Florida, from like Orlando, Tampa, right, all this kind of stuff, will simply be gone. That it'll just be like shpoomp, and it'll just be gone. That's already on the cards. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that's already happened. Like, if you're living in Miami, Tampa, Orlando, you gotta get out of there. You gotta get out of there now. Because, like, this event already has happened. It's already written. It is fated. The gods have decreed it. Because we have defied their will, right? Like, I love to start talking about this in non-scientific terms. I love to talk about this in very theological terms. That there are rules, right, that exist in the universe. That is the will of God. We have defied the will of God, and we're going to pay for it in harsh and brutal ways, right? That, like, these cities are going to be gone. And it's very simple. How about now? It's been a while. Time for NDP to stop the violin and grab an electric guitar. Yeah, but DM, I'm on you. I'm with you here. Your thinking is that Jagmeet must have been bought off by the neoliberal capitalists. I think that's probably likely. Like, it's more like it's easy for me to believe that would be the case, right? Like, and I mean, and which isn't to say that I think that Jagmeet Singh is necessarily like a Machiavellian, like, evil overlord. I actually think his desire to reform the system is genuine. I think that the neoliberals themselves are beginning to say that we need to do some reform, that there needs to be something more serious happening, but they're never going to reform the system in a way to eliminate their own power, right? That fundamentally the reason why our system is failing is because economic power has been shrank into a small cabal of people who don't see themselves as the problem. Hey Nick, how you doing? Yeah, your family thinks you're in a warming period? That's cute. Those memes of Florida being taken off the map is going to become a reality. Absolutely. Absolutely. And Florida is the first place. Like, it's the... And like... and I mean, it's going to lead to all kinds of interesting stuff. Like, what happens if Panama goes underwater? Like, this whole section here, right? Like, you're going to have pretty major shifts in how the power structure looks, right? Let's say that suddenly this whole section is underwater, right? Like you're going to have pretty major changes in the dynamics of how things go. Like, so much of Chinese politics is based on this island system, but if this island system disappears, right? Like, it's all kind of for naught. And I mean, for me, the thing that gets really scary is talking about this desert system that exists, right? We're all familiar with, like, the Las Vegas, Arizona, New Mexico, like, this whole thing, right? Well, this is expanding. We have the evidence. This is expanding and growing, and we're not doing anything really to prevent it. The Trudeau administration here in Canada is like, we're going to plant trees and ban straws, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, those are fine initiatives, but I'd be very surprised if that was enough, right? And like the major issue in my view is this desert system down here that we're simply not addressing. Oh, and to speak of Jagmeet Singh, I want to be really specific. Like, I have come to see Jagmeet Singh as just kind of an orange liberal, right? That the capitalists have already integrated themselves into his organization, and that they are definitely going to use him as that kind of steady relief valve that is indicative of liberals, right? That is liberalism 101, that like the Liberal Party and liberal organizations exist as a relief valve. And because the current ruling class of liberals are now conservatives, they're not actually acting as that relief valve anymore. And so the neoliberals are just seeing what they can get away with, right? And because they're pumping so much propaganda into the populace, and because the populace is so gullible and so uninformed and so stupid about what's actually happening in the world, they're still under this sort of deluded belief that we can continue these negotiations with the neoliberals, right? While they do everything they can to ensure that the city of Miami is going to be wiped off the map. There's going to be incredible, dramatic, like world-shaping events that occur, and when they occur, our society for sure, and this is Jagmeet Singh and across the board, is going to turn to the neoliberals who caused these disasters and ask them what they think should be done. And like, that's not going to work, right? Like, these guys are the reason this is happening, right? And it's not like they're sitting there being like, and then Miami will be gone, right? It's that they have literally no respect for the system that they live in, right? Like, and you can go take a look at the economists, like the neoliberal economists, when they talk about the economy, right? They talk about the economy as if that's the system, as if that's the thing that matters, right? That's why you have these like neoliberals and fascists on the right defending to your death the economy, because they genuinely have replaced the concept of a natural world with rules, or like a god, right? They've replaced that concept with their economy, and they simply can't contemplate the idea that the economy will run counter to the rules that actually exist. Prager's Oreo? Oh, okay. Hey, I'm not your dad, but it's nice to see you. Thanks for popping in. But like, because they don't, planting trees would be enough for climate change if it was a global effort, but just like COVID shows us, global efforts are basically a fantasy. Well, and the number one thing that we should be doing at this point, Treasy, is stop. We just need to stop. Like, the pandemic actually proved this, that all of the environments of all the world improved dramatically and quickly over the lockdown period, because we just stopped doing all of the stupid shit that's causing the problems, right? Because capitalism is the problem, right? And so we stopped doing it in small measure for a small period of time, and it had a dramatic improvement on the environment and on the natural world, right? Things like tree planting, like, I mean, you go over to China, so you see they've got this deserted area here, and I forget which area it was, but there's an area in China that was like, it's called the Sea of Death, is what they call it, because it's like this desert where everything goes to die, and they have an enormous tree planting initiative to try to push all of this back, to try and reclaim all of this, and they're being successful, because they're spending the time and the resources in order to do it. Over here in Africa, they're actually being quite successful with tree planting initiatives in order to stop the expansion of the Sahara Desert, right? Like, this desert is like world renowned, and it's renowned for a reason, right? Like, it's unbelievable that there are people living in Libya. Like, it's unbelievable that like any of these places are getting any amount of people in them. Like you'd think that like Niger would just be empty, but it isn't. It's kind of a testament to the human spirit, but they're doing like massive tree planting initiatives. What is your view on the vegan approach to climate change? If you can do it, you should do it. Veganism is like, that's tough. I've tried to do some vegan stuff. Right now, I am now quasi-vegetarian, and I say quasi-vegetarian because I'm still, weak. I'm still like a person who is capable of failure. But my strategy is that I don't buy meat from the grocery store because I don't want to participate in that. If I go out with someone and they get something with meat and it's like, oh, okay, cool, I'm not going to make a big stance on it. But like veganism, I think, is completely rational in the face of what we're doing, right? I eat there less because they're farther away, and it's Fat Bastard is the name of the burrito place. But again, right, you go to Fat Bastard and you're just like, just go veg, just go vegetarian. Don't even get like the chicken. Just don't do it. Just get a burrito. And I try to make like big lentil chilies, things like this, right? Do everything you can to try and pull back, because the number 2 issue that we're facing is our agriculture, and it's extremely depressing that in the United States, throughout the United States, there's legislation to not allow you to bring journalists and film crews into agricultural facilities. So we can't actually see what's happening inside of these facilities, right? Like, really think about that, okay? Really think about that. We can get a film crew into the Xinjiang region, right? We can get a film crew into the Xinjiang region to see if there's a genocide going on, right? We can do that, but you can't go to a cattle ranch and film and see what's going on in there, right? Like, you can't go to like a Montana cattle ranch and be like, hey, can we actually take a look and see what the conditions of this place are? Can't do that. Not interested in that. And it's also that we can have like fucking McDonald's, right? Like, so McDonald's goes down into like Brazil, clear cuts a whole bunch of territory, destroys the Amazonian rainforest, which we absolutely need. Like, it's like the Amazonian rainforest is critical infrastructure. Like, if you want to think about it in terms of like what the natural world is doing for us and what we need, the Amazon rainforest is critical infrastructure, and we are tearing it down so that we can have cattle farms and all this kind of stuff, so that fat idiots throughout the United States and Canada can go get a burger from McDonald's for $10. It's just like the stupidest possible thing that we could be doing, and simply, it needs to stop. Like, we just need to stop that. And this is essentially what veganism is it is just saying, okay, well, I am no longer going to participate in this. I'm no longer going to be a part of this. I do think that vegans get a bit extreme, but that's normal. I think it's normal for any organization to end up with people who are on the extreme side of things. And I especially, that's what's up, man. Have you watched Conspiracy? Is this a show? Shows how incestuous those charities and health organizations are with the fast food industry in America. The fast food industry in America just needs to end. It just needs to end. Like, we are going, and maybe not next generation, like I don't see a lot of Gen Z people talking about this way, but like, there is going to come a moment in our history, should we survive any of this, where we're going to look at the fast food industry and we're just going to be like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck? That like, there's literally like a place you can go to just get like a greasy, shitty, just gross, plug you up, disgusting burger, and to facilitate the creation and organization of that, we literally have to destroy the critical infrastructure Like, it's insane. Cowspiracy. I've never heard of this. Cowspiracy. The sustainability secret. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna look into this, bud. I definitely need my heart broken today. So once the stream's over, I'm gonna take a look at this. Try and find it, because like what we are doing to, like, I don't mind the idea of like people eating meat and like all of this kind of thing, but like I think that we have like, well, we've commodified them. We've turned cattle into a commodity, right? And so their existence and their life and their life force is just not contemplated. It's just not part of the arrangement. And well, Taco Bell is not even food. Like, Taco Bell is just like like there's a, like, when I go to this burrito place, right? Like the wrap that they have is actually nice. They have a nice gluten-free option because I have a gluten allergy, not allergy, but a gluten thing. Anyway, and their ingredients are all fresh. Like, you can see, like, it's the same stuff that I would buy at a grocery store, right? You can see it right in front of you. All the beans and everything are good. Taco Bell's not even food. It's literally like just like gross paste and the it's like yeah, exactly. Their meats are soupy chemicals, exactly. And the like Taco Bell actually did have a lawsuit, and they had to change their recipe because there was so many chemicals in the like bean paste that they were using or whatever. There were so many chemicals that it could no longer be classified as food, right? That was just like a chemical thing. No, I stopped eating at Taco Bell forever ago. And the what's something that happened recently at Subway, right? So Subway Eat Fresh, right? So an Irish court declared that Subway can't call its the bread, like the loaves that they use, they can't call them bread anymore because there's so much sugar inside of it that it's closer to being a confectionery, right? Like, so it's like you're eating a Danish. It's absolutely crazy. Okay, I'm gonna put this on briefly because I just gotta go run. We're gonna have a chair stream for a moment. All right.
All the time.
Communists killed 70 million people in China.
200 million people conservatively.
Well, obviously more than 100 million, because that's the approximate total. That's probably an underestimate.
Oh yes, especially from this guy. Capitalists use these figures to argue that capitalism is superior to socialism. I could respond by denying that these regimes were really socialist, or by arguing that far less people died under these regimes as capitalists claim. Instead, I'll assume for the sake of argument that these regimes really were socialist, and that the Black Book is correct and that 100 million people really did die. Does it follow then that capitalism is really superior? Only if capitalism has killed less. So let's do something that the right loves to go on about and compare the numbers.
How many millions of people have to die before you might admit that you're wrong?
In order to calculate the death toll of capitalism, we need to look at what capitalism is. It's an economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange. So how many people in contemporary society, let alone across capitalism's long history, die due to this economic system? Capitalism is global. And around the world, 8 million people die from lack of clean drinking water. Roughly another 8 million people die from hunger. Now on top of that,
I've never had Taco Bell, never even been in one before, to be honest. If you want the most depressing food experience you can have, you're going to a Taco Bell, right? Like, you're going to be served by like an oppressed worker who is like, this is their third job, working the overnight shift while they're studying to go to school for a job that they can't get. And they're just like bleary-eyed and there's like this unbelieving nature. Anytime I interact with fast food people, there's like this sense of like, what in the fuck is anyone doing? Like, why are these people here? Why are customers coming to this place? Why is there a demand for any of this? And so in the case of McDonald's, right? Because Taco Bell is confusing to me. Like I legitimately think their entire business model is that they're open. That's it. That they literally are just like, we're open. Because like it's the only thing that I can contemplate about like why would anyone actually go to that establishment and get that? Because it's not food, right? Like it's not even like junk food. Like when I eat a bag of chips, right? Like there's like there's a nice experience here. Taco Bell food is not nice. It's like you're eating plastic, and it tastes gross, and it doesn't like McDonald's has something that they call the bliss point. This is in their literature. You can find it, right? It's the bliss point, which is that they want all of their food to have the perfect combination of sugar, salt, and fat, right? And so they have this combination of sugar, salt, and fat that they have combined together, and they don't care how it tastes. They don't care how it tastes. Taste is like not really even part of the contemplation, as long as it doesn't taste awful, right? But what they care about is they care about the salt, fat, sugar combination that they call the bliss point, so that when you eat it, it releases the maximum amount of dopamine in your brain, right? That's what McDonald's is attempting to do. And so the fact that it's extremely bad for you, that it causes like enormous problems in your digestive system, that it causes enormous problems, and forget about all the environmental issues, and forget about all that, and the fact that like we're literally enslaving ourselves to this absurdist idea that somebody should be able to drive up to this building in a car and in 10 minutes get fucking burger and fries and a big fucking shake and whatever. Like it's absolutely disgusting, and it's just like one of the things that we should simply end. We should simply end the practice of this, because it turns out that if you let the free market decide, well, it's going to make a whole bunch of really stupid decisions, right? It's going to make a whole bunch of self-destructive, idiotic decisions. And the fast food industry across the point, yeah, they're exploiting our addiction to sugar. Yeah, which is an evolutionary feature we developed to eat lots of calories when we could get it, and that's exactly it. And the fact that they're using like science-based exploration in order to exploit us so effectively, if that's what they're doing to just sell us garbage food, what do you think they're doing to get us to work, right? What do you think they're doing to get us to keep working in these facilities? No, and there's nothing redeeming about it. That's the thing that's so crazy to me about the fast food industry. There's like literally no redeeming factor whatsoever. That like it'd be no different in my view if they were peddling some kind of drug from there. But at least like you could say like if they were peddling like meth, be like okay, but that's probably like locally produced, right? So you probably don't have to carve up a whole bunch of Amazonian rainforest in order to produce meth, right? Yeah, people ordering 60 Big Macs, like what the fuck is this? And like, well, and Timmy's is just trash now. Like it's absolutely trash, and yet people still go because propaganda works, right? Because like people still think that Timmy's is like a Canadian institution. Like this is how dumb we are. That like we are still looking at Tim Hortons and going like that's a great Canadian institution. It was bought by Americans like 10 years ago. They sold the coffee recipe, which is why all of their commercials are about how their new like dark roast is actually good. Because they sold the recipe to McDonald's for a quick buck. And now like Tim Hortons it's getting into that like not food category, right? It's getting into that like just how can we sell something that has the appearance of food but it is fundamentally trash? And And unfortunately, it's going to go out the way that a lot of these institutions are going to go out, right? Like they're reducing their costs, so they're making it so that the quality of the product is not good anymore. And the initial thrust of the entire piece was just like, come get a donut, right? I'm not like anti-sweets. I'm not like anti-bad food for you, right? Like we're just people after all. But like, you can't really just have a place that is like a coffee shop anymore. Like I worked for Starbucks for 5 years, right? And when I started, it was just like a coffee place, and it was quite nice actually working there, because it literally was just like your coffee urns, and then you had like one latte machine, right? And then steadily over time, and it happened at quite a rapid pace, as the capitalist pressures continue going on, Starbucks introduced their own version of fast food. They introduced like an oven. They introduced a whole, and so you had these like small spaces. Because Starbucks' whole riff was like, this will be like a nice small, quiet coffee shop, right, well positioned and all of that, and it'll be nice. And it was supposed to be like your mom and pop kind of thing. So you had these small little places that were not designed to have ovens in them, that were not designed to have like a cold bar in them, that weren't designed to have all these gizmos and gadgets and all this kind of stuff. But you just get told, okay, well, just make it work. And so literally, like, you're having to like any back room that you had, right, for breaks or whatever, that gets absorbed by like freezers and shit. And so it's just like this crushing down. And then, and the end result of all of this, of course, is that the quality of the product goes to shit, right? And the quality of the experience goes to shit, right? Like, and I'm really, like, I cannot go to these establishments anymore. Like, it really does trigger my depression in big ways to walk into a fast food organization. Like, I'm fine if you want to like work at like a food organization and this is what you're doing and this is what you like, right? But I know that these workers are being exploited. I know that there's a gun to their head, and that gun is homelessness, that gun is poverty, right? I know that these things exist, and you can see it. It's all over them, where they're just like exhausted and like they don't want to be there. They don't like what they're doing, because who would like this? Like, who would like this job? Let alone the dealing with the public. And the absolute worst is when you encounter one of these people who's trying to fool you into thinking they're having a good time. Those are the worst, right? The absolute worst. Still feel bad for overnight stalkers. Yeah, worst job. And what's so silly to me onward is like something like an overnight stalker, like that should be like a pretty chill job. Like I think about like overnight stalk, and it's like you're not dealing with the public, right? You're just moving stock and stocking shelves. And like, what's so bad about that? But it's because they keep labor as low as possible, right? Because you got to maximize profits, and then that means that they're constantly trying to push these stalkers to do more work than a person should do, right? And so you end up hurting them and burning them out, right? Which is the goal of capitalism, right? Is to just burn people out. And like something like an overnight stock, I'm just like, what? Like, wouldn't it be great if you had your like grocery store, your box grocery store down the way, right? And let's say, twice a week, let's say, you would work a 4-hour shift, like stocking the shelves or doing any of that kind of stuff, or like acting as a cashier or something, right? Well, what I just described there sounds completely fucking reasonable, and is about the amount of labor that everybody would have to pitch in to make sure that this system actually worked, because we've automated it so much, right? Like, people, when people think about automation, they think about like true automation, where it's like I walk into the building and literally there's robots and everything is like all that kind of stuff. But we still are automated. Like, the system has been largely automated, Like, it used to take like 90% of the public to get food from the field to your face, right? It used to take like 90% of us to do that. Now it takes 5%, right? Like, that is a dramatic shift in how the society should be structured. And we're squandering it. We're completely squandering it. We're taking the labor force, and instead of educating them and allowing them to contemplate and dwell on things that matter, we're having them work 3 jobs. It's despicable. Treasy says, Robbins is from my hometown and still exists, though they were sold to a chain a long-ass time ago. Still prefer them to Timmy's. Oh yeah, Robbins! I actually forgot about Robbins. I can't believe there's one of these still around. That's got to be like one of the holdouts, eh? Like, do they still have all the, like, 1970s sort of look about it? You know, I had a chill overnight stocking job until they brought an ex-Navy geezer manager from a bigger store. Yeah, isn't that the worst, right? Like, you get... I've worked under military people before. They're the worst to work for because there's just zero chill. Like, and that's just kind of who they are, right? And they believe in a hierarchy, and they believe in all this kind of stuff. Yeah, unbelievable. I stayed longer than most, and she was shocked when I quit. Well, and, like, the best bosses I've ever had are the ones that understand that what we're doing is kind of bullshit across the board, right? Like, I've worked for guys who like, I worked for one fellow who was like a meteorologist. He studied meteorology, and he was really good at it, really knowledgeable, and he was the manager of a Starbucks. It's like, oh, okay. You know, like, this is not how he viewed his trajectory, and he was a good manager, and I liked working with him. And like, you go and you work for another manager who's like just like a young lady who's just like a hard go-getter, kind of a worker, kind of a farm girl, really. But she also is just like, yeah, this place is kind of bullshit, right? Like, it doesn't fucking make any sense. And and then I've worked for guys who like, I worked for one older gentleman who I rather quite liked because he really did understand that, like, yeah, this is just like a job that we're all working, right? And like, you got to do what you got to do. So while you're here, why don't we have a good time? And that was always really nice. But it's the people who are like, job is all, work is life, and blood is your existence, and pour your energy into this and they will reward you. That's the worst. It's the people who actually genuinely do think you're going to get rewarded for all this hard work. Like, no, you're not. You're fucking not. Like, they're gonna tell you to slag off, right? Like, and that's what's gonna happen. So when I hear about these labor shortages that are happening throughout the United States, I'm like, good. There should be. Like, this whole system should shut down. Like, why is anybody going to work for McDonald's? Why is anybody going to go work for Burger King? Why? Hey, Axel, how you doing today, bud? I don't know if I've seen you in here. Good to see you. Well, at least with a channel this unknown, you're not making any money off it. Not yet, bud. I'm just getting started. Great how you sat in a house full of the products of those capitalist companies, speaking through them, too. All of those were made by workers, bud. All those were made by workers, the effort of workers, right? And I'm trying to diminish my impact on the society as best as I possibly can. I'm just a single individual, right? We're dealing with large-scale systems, if you want to be an adult about it, right? Because your position is pretty childish, bud. Like, it's grow-up time. It's time to start talking and acting like a grown-up. And this, like, individualism of it, this attempt to, like, accuse me of being hypocritical, it's childish, right? It's the same as saying, like, well, the feudal serfs were living under the Lord's house, so what do they have to complain? Like, that's what you sound like, and you sound like a child. So it's time to grow up, bud. It's time to grow up. I used to work at Radio Shack back in the 80s. All they wanted us sales reps to do is BS customers into buying things they don't need. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, and the amount of, like, effort that we're making workers. What's shameful is the system of trash generation, right? Like, that we're just generating a whole bunch of trash. Like, like, LOL dolls are the worst. Like, LOL dolls are absolutely the worst. I gotta show people these LOL dolls all the time. Like, this exists in your society, guys. Like, this exists in your society. So, here, cute little doll, right? Cute little doll. It's about this big. Right? This is one of the highest selling products in the toy market. Here's a great picture. Here's a great picture. Right? What it is a ball of plastic wrapped in plastic, right? So you rip off the plastic, there's a ball of plastic, you open the ball of plastic. Inside the ball of plastic are several little bags of plastic that you rip all open in order to get like all of the pieces, all the little accessories that are all plastic, and it's all junk. Like, this is all garbage, right? This picture you're looking at is just a room of pretty garbage. And it's all done just so like a little girl can go, oh, right? And it's like the exploitation of our children's emotions in order to sell products that they do not need, that are garbage. And it's just like a total disaster right in front of us. If you do work, you should be paid what you're worth, which means billionaires who do little should be paid less than the workers who put their blood and sweat into their work. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's going to require a transfer of ownership of the means of production, right? A friend of mine worked at Radio Shack for years, and then it turned into a glamorized phone store. Yeah, Radio Shack. Okay, can we see one example of a country/nation that has embraced communism that has fared well? I'm a travel guy for work mostly. I mean, I assume you work for a capitalist enterprise, so they're just sending you into the capitalist institutions. So, Soviet Russia eliminated homelessness, free education, free healthcare, increased the living standards of their people in the most dramatic fashion that has ever happened in the history of the world. They were the first people into space, right? Communist China, fastest growing economy in the world by a wide measure. The reduction of poverty that capitalists attempt to claim for themselves has happened in communist China. The Belt and Road Initiative in communist China has been like a literal miracle. Like, what's happened in China is a literal miracle, bud. Like, if you're missing what's happening here under the communists in China, then you're completely detached from what's going on in the world, right? You're just grinding yourself into the capitalist machine while it exploits you and takes as much as it possibly can from you. And do not fool yourself, Axel. The minute your owners no longer think that you're valuable, they'll throw you out onto the street. They absolutely will do that. Don't fool yourself into believing this. Like, they're not your allies. They're not your friends. So when you say to me, like, one example of a country/nation that has embraced communism and has fared well, okay, here's an even better example. Belarus. Okay, let's talk about Belarus and compare Belarus to Ukraine, okay? So the Soviet Union falls, right? The Soviet Union largely falls because neoliberal capitalists affect the both have very, very oppressed citizens. Yes, I'm sure your Western view of their oppression is considered. Harvard University went through China, like literally went through China with the UN and polled the citizens of China, and they have like an 80 to 90% approval rating, dude. Like, I understand that you have your like chauvinistic Western male perspective, but I don't think it actually matters when you actually go talk to the people themselves. Like, the people of China consider that the economic miracles that are occurring around them and the trajectory of their society and the improvements that their society are going through are good. And unless you don't want to take that seriously because, you know, you're a white male from America. So let's talk about Belarus versus Ukraine, right? So the fall of the Soviet Union occurs after a neoliberal coup, basically. We say it's like the end of the Cold War and they had an economic collapse, but the reality is the society transferred hands from the communists to the capitalist class. So when the communist economy recedes, I don't like using the word collapse because it's not what happened, but when it recedes, you have Belarus. China are imprisoning people for having the wrong religion. Oh, so you bought the CIA propaganda. Okay. The identity politics weird, not from the U.S. I mean, okay. Still. I'm just looking at your picture here, bud. But okay, so let's Belarus, Ukraine, right? because I don't want to go down this like China. That's a whole conversation. This line you just said here, China are imprisoning people for having the wrong religion. I will look at any evidence you would like to show me, bud. For real, I'll search up anything you like. But like, I guarantee we're gonna run into some CIA propaganda there. Anyway, Belarus, Ukraine, right? So when the Soviet Union collapses and recedes, so Ukraine goes neoliberal, right? They go neoliberal capital. Belarus stays communist, okay? And they have elections. They keep electing Lukashenko, right, over and over again since the Soviet Union has gone away. And so, of course, both of these places experience a decline in economic activity, right? So a big dip in their economy. Ukraine has never recovered. It is still less economically powerful than it was when it was part of the Soviet Union. So when it was part of the communist regime, if you like. So their economy has never recovered, right? And they've gone full neoliberal, all that kind of stuff. Belarus has the strongest economy in Europe. Only Germany is close. So Belarus has the strongest economy in Europe, and it's because they maintained the communist positions. Most of the industry is still controlled by the state. Most of the industry is still geared for the benefit of the society as opposed to the benefit of a couple of sociopaths, right? And Belarus has positioned itself to be a strong player between between Russia and Europe, right? And it's created a very strong trade corridor here, especially with its working with China through the Belt and Road Initiative. The Xinjiang. No, they don't. They are the 22nd strongest economy behind many European countries. The economy is the world's 72nd. It's the world's. We're talking about Europe. And now Xinjiang internment camps have had world media visits. Yeah, the BBC went in and they found nothing, right? Look, what did they find? They found nothing, right? So the UN is going to go in. What did they find? They found nothing, right? Like, what are they finding? They're finding nothing. Like, for real, what are they finding? Show me the pictures. Is China a republic? China is a republic. Like, the way it works is that each region, each province of China goes through an election, and they elect their own representative to the it's called NPC. I forget the exact name of it. Anyway, so they elect their own leadership here into a body, right? And it's this body that is the primary ruler of China. That, like, all institutions and everything that come up throughout the communist China, the Communist Party, throughout the communist situation, like even the presidency, like so, Xi Jinping, he is elected through this body and through this process. And of course, this body is constantly polling its own people, constantly trying to find ways. And so there is like a democratic institution that exists throughout China. It just doesn't look the way that the Western parliamentary system looks, right? And I mean, given the intense growth that the Chinese people have experienced, the nation building and the world building that China is going through right now, like, China's poised to put a moon base on the moon. I keep saying moon base on the moon. I should just say base on the moon, but not sure what BBC you were referring to. BBC Uyghur documentary. If you go through my videos, you'll find me doing, like, here's a 10-minute video where they literally go through these places, and my favorite part. Oh, I gotta let that. My favorite part about this particular documentary, they do everything they can to try and demonize the Chinese. Oh my God! Come on, we just went through this. Why? Poink. They do everything they can to try and demonize the Chinese, and at the end of the thing, at the end of the whole thing, they literally show the people who are going to these vocational schools, which is what they are like getting into buses, and they leave and they go into the city at the end of the night. It's like, oh yeah, okay, like real genocide. Like, and you have to respect what the Chinese are experiencing. The war of Afghanistan, right, created an entire people who are completely displaced and who have only known war their whole life, right? Like, if you are in Afghanistan and you are 18, like if you're 18-year-old living in Afghanistan, all you've ever known is war. All you've ever known is war. You don't even understand what peace is, right? So your whole society is blown up. And this creates refugees, right? And where do many of these refugees end up? Oh, they end up going through this corridor right here into the Xinjiang province, right? And so you have Islamic terrorist organizations that will do things like 10 men went into the transit system of a city in Xinjiang and they murdered 150 people with machetes, right? Like that kind of thing. So this is the scale of the issue that the Chinese are dealing with. But instead of bombing people, right, which is the American solution, right, just bomb them, China has erected vocational centers and is attempting to integrate these people into the wider economy. It's not a cleansing, right? It's not an attempt to eradicate the culture of Islam, and you can go on YouTube and find all kinds of Uyghur celebration in China. Like, you can find all kinds of videos. Of course, you get this kind of bullshit from John Oliver, but like, you can find all kinds of videos of Uyghurs celebrating their openly celebrating their from the BBC. We're gonna run into CIA propaganda right away, bud. You're gonna see it. Watch this. So, their goal is to destroy everyone. Uyghur camp detainees allege. I think that should be enough. Nope. Yeah, I'm not finding it, but honestly, bud, like, BBC, CIA, you trusted them before? No. The BBC and the CIA are what lied us into this war, dude. Like, remember the weapons of mass destruction grift? Remember that? Remember how the CIA told us that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and now this region is completely destroyed? Afghanistan is destroyed, Iraq is destroyed, Syria is destroyed, Libya is destroyed. Egypt is attempted to free itself of its theocracy and then ended up with a military coup on its hands. You've got literally like the fourth largest military force here in Saudi Arabia committing a genocide in Yemen, the ongoing Palestinian genocide, right? This region is a disaster, and it was all predicated on a lie that was sent to us by the CIA. Yeah, sorry, dude. Links don't come through. Here, let me try this. Try sending the link through again, bud. Because I want to look at what you're looking at, bud, but I don't. YouTube doesn't let me actually get. Yeah, and Biden just dropped some more bombs in Iraq. Like, I mean, this odd, strange narrative that Westerners have, where they seem to forget that they've completely destroyed this region, and it was completely based on a overt and obvious lie that was sent to us by the CIA, and then suddenly we're getting CIA propaganda out of China about a Uyghur genocide, and Westerners are completely uncritical about it. Like, they're just completely uncritical. They're like, oh, the CIA said it, so it must be true. Like, what are you talking about? That's complete and total bullshit on the face of it. And you can find, like, honestly, dude, here's what I almost guarantee is going to be in this link, okay? So, if you can't send me the link and we can't find it, all that kind of stuff, okay, just read the link, right? Read the article yourself, okay? Go through it. If you find anything like the Uyghur World Congress, right? If you find anything like the Uyghur World Congress, the National Endowment for Democracy, just tell me what the organization is that they're referring to. Do they directly reference Adrian Zenz, right? So if you see anything like National Endowment for Democracy, Uyghur World Congress, Adrian Zenz, those are all CIA organizations and CIA assets, right? I see no reason to trust the CIA. I said I see no reason whatsoever to trust the State Department. I see no reason whatsoever to trust these guys. It is extremely obvious that they want to turn China into another Iraq, Afghanistan situation. It seems extremely obvious that that is their goal. I don't see any reason to believe them. I don't see any reason to pay attention to them. So when people come at me with this China Uyghur stuff, I'm like, show me the evidence, dude. I can show you direct evidence of a genocide in Yemen, and I can show you direct evidence of a genocide at the Gaza Strip and the West Bank that are both being propped up by the current U.S. administration and the military-industrial complex. I can show you that as clear as day. But your pretend genocide, for which you have no actual evidence of, outside of like satellite photos from above of buildings and like grainy sites and falsified testimony propped up by the CIA. Oh yeah, super believable. I'm definitely on board with all of that. No, here's a funny thing. This link has images of the abuse. Also, you misquoted by no, I didn't, bud. Like I said it's the 72nd strongest economy, but it's the strongest economy in the region, right? Like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you here, bud. And I mean, they have images of abuse, but oftentimes you'll find that the CIA uses. So what the CIA will do is they'll go to like an Afghanistan prison, right? And they'll take pictures of of what's happening in the Afghanistan prison, and then they'll put it onto an article, and they say this is what's happening in China, right? That happens all the time. Look, if the CIA is involved, bud, you cannot trust it. Like, you cannot trust it. Behind many European... Okay, yeah, sorry, but it just seems to me like you're splitting hairs. Like, so I'll concede it. I don't care. The economy of Belarus is stronger than the economy of Ukraine, who both followed very similar paths, and Belarus stuck with communism, Ukraine went neoliberal, right? Like, there's your case study. You were right when they took the media down in Middle East that something's going to happen, and then strikes, but no one on the ground reporting. Yeah, can get out on to the West. Exactly, right? They want to keep everything quiet. They don't want us to know anything, right? They don't want us to be able to see what they're doing, because what they're doing is probably international war crimes, right? Like, they're probably rounding up people. They're probably creating black sites. They're probably creating a pretty... I suspect that they're probably moving forward with a pretty major torture campaign right now. Like, that's the U.S. Across the board, right? The West has been intervening in the Middle East now for centuries. Yeah, within the past 6 or 7 decades or so, the U.S. has a vested interest in regime change. Well, and it's telling that the Islamic people in the region consider this just an extension of the Crusades, right? George W. Bush called it a crusade, right? He said that we were launching a crusade. So the Muslims in this region, they just extend it. I think it's the 11th crusade now. Like they understand what's happening on that kind of intrinsic level. That the United States is largely an evangelical Christian nation that has fallen into fascism without a doubt, and that they are just inflicting a crusade across the board. These are just systems of social organization, like a computer algorithm. You're free to think about different outcomes. That's kind of a peaceful thought, Ward. I like that. Okay, you know what? But I'll concede it. I don't care. What's Belarus versus Ukraine? Romania are 18. Okay. Yeah. But according to who, right? According to what link are you looking at? Is it the Wikipedia? Is it the Wikipedia article? Because the Wikipedia article is again, where are we here? I've lost it. Like, I'm happy to alter my what I say. Come on, I think I closed it. Okay, I'm happy to alter what I say based on new evidence, but like a Wikipedia article is not really going to cut it. Because I mean, oh, here you go. Oh, you're just going on GDP. Oh, okay. Yeah, GDP is a terrible measure. Like, GDP is a terrible measure. Like, you wanna pay attention to things like life expectancy. You want to pay attention to, like, of course, ease of doing business, rank 49th. Very easy. Okay. Main exports. And again, you want to be comparing this stuff, because like if you just take GDP, like even the guy that invented GDP doesn't. He said outright, don't measure your economy based on GDP, right? Like it's not a good thing to do. Look, what about the Human Development Index, right? Very high, right? Like why is this not part of the? Anyway, I feel like this is taking over my chat, and I admit I'll dig deeper into this, right? For sure. So, by GDP, like the guy that invented GDP says not to use this as a measurement, right? Like it's a with the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, all former Soviet after the he launched the path of market socialism, as opposed to what Lukashenko considered the wild capitalism chosen by Russia at that time. Yeah. You specifically said economically and then measured monetary values. You were the one who said the comparison. Okay. But like, honestly, but I don't want this whole chat to just turn into like a comparison, like between these two. Honestly, it's just gonna be arduous and a pain in the ass. So I'll concede the whole point. So let's get off. You win. I don't care. Belarus, Ukraine, fine. The economies of Russia and the economies of China still stand, right? Russia was the first to space. China's going to put a moon base on the moon, right? They've increased their the amount of growth that China has accelerated over time. The amount of growth that Russia had during the Soviet period. The amount of industrialization. Russia was the country that beat the Nazis. Like, Russia defeated the Nazis during World War II. Like, this idea that the Soviets or that that communism was not a resounding success when it was going and is currently going. I think you really got to detach yourself. Like, China, even admitted by Joe Biden himself, has the strongest economy in the world. Everything they're doing is moving forward. This and what always happens is that Westerners come and they see, oh, look at this. There's poor Chinese peoples, and because there's no connection whatsoever to what happened previously, right? There isn't a base understanding in the West that what you're seeing is actually a drastic improvement from what was happening before, and that it's an unfolding project. Like, when you go and listen to Xi Jinping, you listen to some of his speeches, and you listen to his, or you read any of the documents or anything, they consider it an unfolding project, that it's improvements through time. And while China is improving itself, Western capitalism is going into like a free fall collapse. It's poverty rates are increasing, education rates are in decline, quality of life is decreasing. There's the life expectancy is decreasing, right? That's happening all throughout the United States. And in the meantime, all of those measures are improving in China. Does China have a long way to go? Yeah, of course they do. It's an unfolding project, right? But again, just like Russia was the first nation to actually get into space, and the first nation to get life into space, the first nation to actually get a satellite to orbit around the Earth, like these incredible, massive advancements that we all forget because the Americans just plopped a man on the moon, and that was the victory moment, I guess. In the same way that Russia did that, China's going to do the same thing with space exploration. Like they're going to build a base on the moon. 2025 is what they think. Here, hold on. Have you heard of While Canada Slept? How We Lost Our Place in the World by Andrew Cohen? I haven't. I do like Andrew Cohen though. Anytime I read his stuff. In 2019, 58% of American ages 18 to 34 reacted positively to the word capitalism. That's plunged to 49% today. Yeah. Back then, 39% of all U.S. adults viewed socialism positively, according to the latest poll. The USSR won the space race and absolutely... But this is the funny thing about that statement, Devin. It absolutely crushed the U.S. U.S. propaganda likes end it at the moon landing when progress continued. Yeah. And... like, it's not really a race. Like, that's the thing that's so funny about this. Is this there's this idea that there was a space race, but that whole idea of a space race was just propaganda, right? It was just propaganda that was fed into our faces, so that we could just go along and buy this idea of like, because there's lots of people throughout the United States that were asking at the time, like, wait, why are we doing this? Like, what's the goal of this? But it did capture the imagination of the people. When the Russians get into space and they start doing this kind of stuff, that captures the imagination of the people. And the United States had to do something about it, right? They can't just let Russia keep doing this. They can't allow their own citizens to see how effective communism is, right? They can't do that. So they've got to put forward their own space plan and create this myth of a space race that where there's a finish line, and that finish line is putting a man on the moon, right? And of course, if you set the parameters of the race and then launch and then set out to do that with information and technology that you've taken from your competitors, right? The United States didn't create the knowledge to get into space, right? They took it from the Russians, and so so this whole narrative, right? This whole space race narrative. My stays in Kaluga and Ryazan showed me firsthand that people are terrified of their government. Well, I mean, are you going... So, hold on. Let's be real specific here about Kaluga. So you're going to, like, modern-day Russia today? Yeah, of course they're terrified of their government. Like, it's a neoliberal government. Putin is a neoliberal. Like, they've opened up their economy, right, to just Western forces who have come in and pillaged it, and yeah, of course they're scared of their current government. It's neoliberal capitalism. I'd be scared of it too. The Russian people are absolutely amazing. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? The people are always wonderful. They're always good people, but they're very open about the huge restriction placed upon them, especially when dealing with foreign companies. 6 and 7 years ago, that's still Putin, dude. Like, Putin was, he came in, like, the quote-unquote fall of the Soviet Union, which was a neoliberal capitalist coup. They drove tanks in the streets, there were mass protests, it was like it was a major event that was pitched to us as if it was like, oh, the Russian communism failed and it collapsed, when really what happened is that the Western capitalists got in bed with the political class in Russia and essentially bribed them into changing how they do things. And so they move away from the communist way of doing things. And now they're in like this neoliberal position, which one of the major things about neoliberalism is that it paves the way to fascism and creates the perfect merger between the state and the private sector, right? So, of course, they're having difficulty dealing with foreign companies because neoliberal capitalists want to own everything, right? And if you're not dealing with them, then you're not dealing. And the idea that, like, so 6 and 7 years ago, you're telling me, like, oh, we're terrified of our neoliberal capitalist government. Yeah, I would be scared of my neoliberal capitalist government too, and in fact, I am. I'm pretty scared of Trudeau. I mean, I'm not scared of Trudeau, but I'm definitely scared of what he's just sort of allowing to happen, right? Like, Trudeau himself is just an actor. Like, literally a drama teacher with his father's name. They give him cue cards, he reads the cue cards. He doesn't really have any ideas. Like, he's not the one pushing the agenda, but he's happy to let everybody else push the agenda. Young people don't expect to have a good life in America anymore. Buying a home, having kids with certain futures, retiring. Why would they like capitalism? Well, and onward, like, this is, I have a friend who is like a high-level lawyer, right? Like, he's working at exactly the institutions that you would expect a high-level lawyer to work at. He got the highest grades in his class, worked his ass off. I always knew him to be like a studious, astute, hardworking gentleman who has done everything right. He did everything right. And anybody who would tell me differently, I would just be like, nah, you're just out of touch with reality. And he cannot buy a house, right? A high-level lawyer at the highest level of the society cannot buy a house. That's a failure. That's a complete and total failure. Myself and my writing partner were spoken to about our mention of Russia in our first book. We were writing fiction, and they almost made it fact. Okay. Like, I'm not going to disagree with you about that. Modern day Russia is definitely like a brutal place. Like, Putin is a gangster. He's former KGB, right? Like, he is happy to be amongst the oligarch class that controls Russia in a very similar arrangement that the United States has configured itself into, right? Like, this is what's so funny about the United States versus Russia kind of grift that keeps happening throughout the United States. Russia and the United States are like economic allies in many ways. Like, the thing that really, really holds them back from just basically broing down is the fact that Russia is still self-interested, and so creates tight alliances with the rising power nearby, right? Russia wants to be buddies with China, well, or at least wants to maintain positive political ties and economic ties to China. Meanwhile, working beyond 40 hours a week and not receiving enough pay to afford a small apartment in a rundown neighborhood, yeah, we face a homelessness crisis right now. Well, when you have people like the WEF, I don't know what the WEF is offhand, bud. Propagandizing failure, like, you will own nothing and be happier for it. Yeah, it's a well, I mean, like, I've already accepted that if I can maintain, like, the apartment I have, and if I can do, like, a stream, and if I can stay on this level where I'm at right now, where I own nothing, right? I rent, and if I can do that, then that's good enough for me. Like, I've seen what homelessness looks like in my country. I've seen what poverty looks like in my country. I know that those options are available to me, and I know that I could very well be on that path. Which, here's a good moment to say, hey, maybe give me a buck, eh? If you've got a buck jangling around in your pocket, I got a Patreon in the description, right? Think about donating a buck, keep me off the streets, which is an option for me, right? And I know it is, because I've seen it and I've talked to those people, and I know exactly that their trajectory is my trajectory, and I don't see any reason to beat around the bush about that. It's the Canada and the United States is largely ignoring the homelessness crisis that exists. It's largely ignoring the World Economic. I feel like I should have known that. I should have known that, bud. They are pushing communism as an idea to embrace, but only for the purposes of them to buy up their properties for themselves. You will own nothing, but they will. Hey, yeah, send $20 to John. Yeah, I'd definitely do that. Listen to DM. Yeah, guys, listen to DM. DM's got it right, you guys. You should listen to DM. Yeah, see, everybody's saying it. Well, but that's not communism, right? Like, that's not communism. What you're describing is fascism, bud. Like, fascism is, Mussolini defined it, the founder of fascism defined it. He said it should be better called corporatism because it's the merger of the public sector with the private sector, right? And what you're describing is the state, so like think Canada, right? So the state just subsidizing or allowing billionaires to buy up the property market for themselves, right? That has nothing to do with communism. It's there's a line that keeps getting said where people keep saying, oh, this is socialism for the rich, right? That, oh, the state is coming in and bailing out or buying up or transfiguring things on the behalf of the wealthy. And so we're calling it socialism for the rich. Socialism for the rich is fascism, right? And the people who are saying socialism for the rich just don't have the cojones to actually say what it is, which is fascism. And they're only pushing the idea of quote-unquote communism in this context because they want to convince you that communism is akin to poverty. It's just more Western propaganda, right? I know it's not communism, great, but that is the easiest way for them to start to gain control. Yeah. Communism is a prelude to fascism. You and I are going to disagree on that front, bud. They are on opposite ends of the spectrum. That fascism very specifically is when capital seizes control of the state and configures the society in order to maintain the private interests of the ownership class in an oligarchy, right? That's what we saw underneath Mussolini. That's what we saw underneath Hitler. That's what we're currently seeing throughout the United States and Canada. That's what we're seeing in modern day Russia, right? We're seeing this. Yeah, I've also heard. Yeah, one always really. When did communism lead to fascism? Yet one always invariably leads to the other. I've heard this before too. Fascism is capitalism in decay. Well, and of course my position, the communist. What are you talking about? Like, sorry, Axel. Like, what? That's just confusing to me. So you're saying that China is currently fascist? Is that right? Is that the claim? That China is currently fascist? My position, of course, is that fascism and capitalism are actually quite. No, I know, Axel. It's quite linked. Like, fascism and capitalism are like, even if you, no, like, no, bud. Like, China is not fascist. Like, it really, like, it doesn't take that long to realize that, like, the people of China are voting in a system to elect representatives. Those representatives are responsive to the needs of the public. There's no, like, there are no signs of this fact. Like, it's so desperate. Like, it's so desperate to attempt to say that China is a fascist country. Like, especially when you consider what's actually happening in the West, where there is actual, like, legitimate fascism throughout the United States. And like Biden is essentially like this sort of Weimar period existing in the United States right now until the Republicans seize control of the state infrastructure again and just ramp it all up again, right? But Biden, I mean, for God's sakes, he's literally bombing Syria. literally bombing Iraq like yesterday, dude. Like I mean, who's China invading? Like who's what the and right, in my view, capitalism and fascism are inexorably linked. That people try to pretend as though they are distinct from one another. I don't see them as distinct. I see them as the same system. That, let's say you lived in a actual capitalist economy, right, where people were actually free to trade around and free to do this kind of thing. But eventually this configures itself so that the capitalists buy the political system. So I'm just going to describe it for you, bud. Like, you have mega corporations, right, that have bought politicians, right? The political class in the United States is purchased. They are completely owned. They do not respond to the will of the populace at all, right? This is already a fascist configuration. The merger of the public sector and the private sector. Massive corporations and their conglomerates and their owners buying the political system and merging them, right? That the privatization of public infrastructure that has happened throughout the United States is leading to massive decay. Fascism and modern China. Maria Haschang, the China Quarterly. Oh yeah, Cambridge. I'll dive right in. Yeah, and the corruption is the feature of the system. Yeah, not a bug. Money is free speech, etc. You can't call it corruption if it's working as intended. Exactly, Robin. Exactly. And that, like, I mean, the Christian evangelicals. You can read Chris Hedges' Christian Fascists, and Chris Hedges is a brilliant source. If you don't know Chris Hedges, he just did a really great. Is that this one? This one, American Sadism. He just did this. High recommend. High recommend. So, and because this oligarch class that exists in the United States has purchased their political infrastructure, right, which is this merger that we're talking about, this is a fascist organization that exists in the United States, certainly exists in the United States. You can look at Canada. The Trudeau government has just erected the Canada Infrastructure Bank, right, which is a permanent entrenchment of capital wealth into government, that you won't be able to build infrastructure without asking permission of the oligarch class. Sound like a Republican conservative? Okay. I don't really care about the labels, honestly. Like, I care about solutions, I care about ideas, and I care about solving problems, right? Like, we have a homelessness crisis. We also want government out of everything. I don't want government out of everything. Quite the opposite. I just want the government, like, I want the government to actually own the infrastructure that we need to survive, right? Like, we should have, like, back in the 70s here in Canada, we had huge amounts of housing was owned by the state. Huge amount of housing was owned by the state, right? It kept rent low. It kept people off the streets, right? Throughout the 60s and 70s, we had a much more compassionate system. And then throughout the 80s and 90s and 2000s and to this modern era, we've privatized lots of that. And what has that privatization led to? Jacked up rent, homelessness crisis, right? Like, and so I don't want the government to be out of everything. I just think that the government should operate independently of the private sector. That the government should own, like, water, right, healthcare. The government should have control of roads, the military, certainly, police services, right? Things that we require. I'm happy to let the capitalists go off and, like, make baubles and doodads and, like, do, the kind of meaningless luxury work to entice people to buy bullshit they probably don't need in the first place. I'm happy to, that's fine. You can go off and do that with your life. That's great. But, like, the state should probably control the food distribution network, right? The state should probably control whether or not we get clean water or not. The state should probably control the police, right? Like that. But if you suddenly allow a private institution to wedge itself between the distribution of necessary goods into the society and the people who actually have it, well, then you're just allowing a parasite to exist in your system, right? Because they provide no value, they do nothing important, right? They've just wedged themselves between the start and the finish. And in fact, they are a drain, ultimately. And then when the government, this fear-mongering position, what if they choose to deny it to you? Yeah, as if corporate capitalists don't deny. Like, literally, Texas is in the middle of a major energy shortage that is based completely on privatized lines and all this kind of stuff. As if capitalism isn't constantly withholding food and shelter from us, as if capitalism is not constantly in this state of withholding goods from us that we need to survive, as if that doesn't happen. What if they choose to deny it to you in a democracy? Like, here in Canada, we still have a democracy, right? So you're telling me that the government is just going to start denying necessary infrastructure? Well, then they don't survive for long, do they? Right? Like, yeah, and I'm not saying that people who take over government institutions can't go insane and lose their minds, but I mean, you think that major corporations are not also capable of that? And at least the government is responsive to the populace. Like, we go and we vote, right? Like we can go into the halls of power. We can take that over, right? There's a peaceful way to do that. I can't take over. Like, what am I supposed to do if a corporation denies me clean water, right? Which they do have done historically throughout South America, where neoliberalism has been the rule for the last 40 years, right? Like, I'm not gonna, like, I don't understand why you think some private sociopath who literally goes to, like, Jeffrey Epstein's island to have sex with little girls is somebody that we should worship and adore, but our own government that we elect and actually engage in as a populace, I should be afraid of. It's a very strange position to take, in my view. Yeah, the government only denies to the middle class and the poor. They love CEOs and millionaires. Well, as long as they're dominated by them, right? That this is the reason why a single billionaire is actually dangerous, like structurally dangerous. Because if you have a single billionaire in your society, the society has to reconfigure itself to accommodate the existence of this billionaire. And the billionaire will always attempt to take over the system, right? They will, and if you have $1 billion, you can, right? There's only like 350 elected officials in the federal government, right? So if you pay each one of those, $1 million, right? So that's $350 million, and that's like this ham-handed version of what actually happens, right? Sesame credit. You've seen the social credit score system in China is implemented, where they restrict citizens' access to things like travel and to citizens with a low score. It's literally. I've never seen anything that heightens this social credit score system to the level that you're talking about. Like, everything I've seen about the social credit score shows me that it's not much different than the credit system that we have, right? You've got a credit score, right? Like, and I feel like, again, like the social credit score has been taken by CIA propagandists and has been heightened to this, like, demonization level, right? Like, you live in a highly propagandized society, bud. Like, you live in a highly propagandized society, to the point where, like, you've got to be checking your sources. Like, you've got to be checking your sources, because most of the time, whenever I see anything like this, whenever I see an article like this, it always goes back to, like, Radio Free Asia. It always goes back to the National Endowment for Democracy. Like, and the lines are usually really, really clear. Like, this credit system that you're talking about, like, again, I'm always happy to read articles. I'm always happy to read more. But everything I've seen has shown me that it's essentially a credit system. Like, oh no, the Chinese did the thing that we do. The billionaires wouldn't be so if it wasn't for government subsidies. Yes, I think that's right, Devin. Just get rich enough for the government in your pocket and get even richer. And Elon Musk is exactly this, right? That's who Elon Musk is. Like Tesla and all of those initiatives don't exist without heavy government subsidies, right? And it's the same story for like the fossil fuel sector. It's the same story for the agricultural sector. And this idea that it's like a bunch of guys bootstrapping themselves, pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. No, like boy howdy, I think I'd be able to pull myself up by my bootstraps if I was receiving, $1 billion in subsidies. That'd be a real great way to bootstrap myself. Again, Alex, I just feel like it's very, very likely that this is just being blown out of proportion, right? That it probably doesn't have the impact that you're thinking. Yeah, whatever happened to Biden's trickle-up economy promise? Biden's not keeping any of those promises, dude. Like, Biden's full of shit. Forgive me for suspecting that the people who are aggressively unimpressed by PRC poverty reduction are also people who would be excited about something of the same magnitude happening for white people. Yeah. How about Business Inside for a source? Business Inside, like a pretty entrenched capital. China's social credit system ranks citizens and punishes them with throttled internet speeds and flight bans if the Communist Party deals them untrustworthy. Okay, so let's discuss something about this. Like, let's say that they have a social credit system, creates ranking for citizens, punishes them with throttled internet speeds and flight bans if the Communist Party deems them untrustworthy. Okay, so should a government not have mechanisms in place to punish their citizens, right? Let's just push in. Should a government not have mechanisms to disincentivize citizens from interacting in certain ways? We literally have a prison system. Like we literally have these things. Like, should a government not have the ability to do that? Because that's fundamentally what we're talking about. Like, you're creating like this ominous, like omnipresent, like, and then but like we lock, like the United States locks up a vast majority of the world's prison population is in the United States, right? And you're complaining about throttled internet speeds and flight bans. Oh, okay. Like, the United States will literally just like take people and throw them in prison because it makes them money to do that. Not to the extent of them simply, but that's just what Business Insider is saying, right? Like, again, I just feel like there's this like, and then China is gonna, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. Like, I don't, like, let's say they have a social credit score. Like, the idea that they're going to use it in order to, like, you got to remember, dude, like, this war over here, right? This explosive, destructive, ridiculous war right over here in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, all that kind of stuff has had major consequences for China. And the idea, like, if let's create a scenario, right? Let's create a scenario. Let's say that this region down here. Oh, let's say that Florida, right? Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, this region right here, suddenly is destroyed by some kind of hurricane or some kind of large-scale event, right? And you have white supremacist groups who crop up and start to just purge the society, take over land, and this whole area descends into a 20-year conflagration and a massive scale war, right? Like filled with like literally like people saying, I will blow myself up for God, that the United States military needs to get involved. Let's say they like create a barrier here. Mississippi, Tennessee, North Carolina, right? Here's the line, the battle line, and this becomes a literal fucking war zone where everything is just absolutely destroyed and ridiculous. And so these people start to escape, right? They start to get out into Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. What? You don't want any system whatsoever to make sure? Like, you don't want any system at all to be like, maybe we should check and see, like, are these people, like, are people going into Pennsylvania, right? Starting to get into institutions there to funnel resources from Pennsylvania down to a neo-fascist organization in Georgia, right? Like, this is happening. Like, this is real. This is why I say all the time, like, it's grow up time. Like, there's major wars going on. This is a major war that has had a major impact on China. It's had a major impact on China, and China's doing everything it can to peacefully deal with this. That if we were acting, if China was acting the way we were acting, we would be screaming our heads off about it, right? And it seems to me like the major complaint is that China is looking for solutions that aren't, let's drop bombs on them, right? Like, that's what the Americans would respect. That if we actually bombed these people, that's what we would respect. But China's attempting to do, like, you don't think flight bans are a very bad thing? I mean, yeah, but again, like, I don't know, but you don't know what's going on. Like, this is the thing that I really need to press on. You don't know what's going on. You have no idea what the conversation is. You have no idea what the judicial system looks like. You have no idea who is saying what or what is saying who. And you are creating a narrative in your mind that creates a person who's just like opening a paper and being like, oh, I don't know if I agree with the Chinese government on this one. And then the Chinese government like crushing them, right? Like, that's the narrative you've created in your mind. And I'm trying to create a counter narrative, which is, oh, hey, there are radical terrorists that operate in China who attempt to create large institutions. Like, literally there is a movement that wants to take this region of China and make it independent, right? The CIA funds them. And so China is not only facing internal terrorism from enormous amounts of refugees coming into their borders, but they're also, right, they're also being inflicted constantly with CIA propaganda, CIA spy organizations, and CIA psyops that are attempting to get into their borders, right? Like, and so what you are looking at is a country that is attempting to deal with not only the fallout from a war over here, but also a constant threat of war from the United States and Europe, which incidentally, at the last G7 summit, they were very explicit about. They're very upfront about this. Like, if I'm China, like, and you're coming back at me and turning around and saying like, okay, bud, hold on, time out. What are you talking about? There are almost zero white supremacists left in the U.S., a few thousand, and you think that is a valid reason to be able to oppress your entire population. You are extremely off the mark on this one, bud. That the FBI and even the CIA says that white supremacist organizations throughout the United States are the most threatening. Like, for God's sakes, what do you think the January 6th insurrection, like, who do you think went to that thing, right? Like the white supremacist organizations throughout the United States and Canada are very present. Very present. Very present. So I so wish I could send you links. I've watched a documentary interviewing citizens in China with low scores who are taking the reporter around with them as they are score tracked and refused. Okay, but like, again, I feel like you're going to get a one-sided argument, right? So some, like BBC people went in and interacted, like, and you don't know anything about these people, right? Like, you don't know anything about them, right? Like, for all you know, they could be literally interviewing terrorists, right? They could literally be interviewing people who, like, murdered people, bombed people, stole stuff. You don't know anything about it, right? Like, and that's the thing that I'm really trying to push on here, and why I'm trying to create a counter narrative, is that you literally don't know anything about it. The services and products that they wish to buy, use. Right, so if they took this person and locked them in a cell for 20 years, would that be better? There was one lady who spoke on Facebook that she did not like the rail system near her, and she was refused access to all public travel for a week. Right, so but again, like, you don't know anything. Like, was she just like, oh, I don't know if I like that rail system, or was she organizing with terrorist organizations that send men into the transit system to kill people with machetes? Like, white supremacists are at the Capitol. Oh, dear sweet boy. Dear sweet boy. Like, I mean, the Republican Party is, by and large, a white supremacist organization, dude. Like, I really, really hate to break it to you. Like, the Republican Party is largely a white supremacist organization. Like, they, you could take a look at what they're reenacting Jim Crow legislation all throughout the southern United States. Like, you said you weren't an American? Well, hate to break it to you, bud. Like, at least the Republican Party is a fairly entrenched white supremacist organization. Like, and the same is true, incidentally, here in Canada of the Conservative Party. That the Conservative parties have large-scale white supremacist organizations inside of them, for sure. They recently actually, because the Liberals, one of them, Derek, whatever his name is, okay, but like, so she showed the Facebook message, which is a piece of independent evidence to anything else, right? She went with him as she showed her restrictions, which is the punishment for whatever thing is going on. Like, did he have an interview with Chinese officials? Was there actually a conversation about that? It's always interesting to me, like these BBC articles and these BBC, like the BBC literally sent a film crew into the Uyghur camps, right? They literally sent a film crew in. They had an interview with two major officials in the region, and they literally showed us a one-liner from each of these guys instead of showing us the interview, right? And it's always interesting to me that Westerners do this. Well, right back at you, bud. Like, right back at you. Yeah, the Southern strategy. Yeah, that's a good place to start. I also, dude, like, just straight up, like, this speech here, Chris Hedges. And Chris Hedges' stuff is, like, a really good way to get at corporate totalitarianism, who cancel culture really serves. Like, Death of the Liberal Class, really good read. Chris Hedges, really important seminal figure in American history. Truth Seeker, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. I'm with you on the economic issues. Completely wrong about the issue of white supremacy. That issue is the CIA psyop itself. How so? How so? Can you expand on that, Truth Seeker? Because, like, there definitely is a really strong white supremacist movement through the Republican Party and the Conservative Party in Canada. Like, there was one, what was his name? Derek Sloan. Derek Sloan was ejected from the Conservative caucus because he was too mask off about it. He wasn't secret enough about it. And so the Liberals started really pushing on the Conservatives, and they sacrificed him, right? But there's plenty of obvious, overt, really, really open white supremacists in the Republican Party, for sure. Morris Berman. I don't think I've ever heard of Morris Berman, bud. Here, Morris Berman. So he's a little bit older, American. Okay. Let's. Does Morris Berman? I love it when I find new people. Berman. Okay, I'm gonna take why America failed in praise of shadows. Isn't that nice? It was such a treat when I came across Michael Parenti. Michael Parenti had done a series of lectures throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s that surfaced on YouTube about 7-8 years ago, and Michael Parenti, really, really good stuff. So it's always nice to see this kind of stuff. I'm definitely going to check this out, but not right now, obviously, but oops. Okay, I'll just get rid of it. John, I sent a link in the server regarding China. Oh yes, Understanding CCP Resilience, Surveying Chinese Public Opinion Through Time. Yeah, this is a great article. I think I read this. Was it this one? This is really good, Robin. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to take a look through this. I might even do a video just with this, just to kind of encapsulate what this is and why it's an important document. Like, it's always interesting, man. Like, the more information that surfaces about the West's viewpoint of China and Soviet Russia, like, for example, like, Stalin was always called a dictator, and everybody's like, oh, what a dictator. But then you see, like, these CIA organizations that come out, oh, that's a clever way to get around that, bud. That's a clever way to get around that. Smart man. Look at you. Resourceful. Resourceful. I admire this. Okay, let's see what I can do here. So that's a dot. I admire your passion and your commitment to your craft. Dot. Dot. Is that all of it? Here's hoping. Okay. So this goes way back in the conversation. Their goal is to destroy everyone, which... how do you even have a country? Okay, let's just go through it. They wore suits. Now, before we even get into this, I'm going to be as upfront as I can, bud. Like, Iranian false testimony. This is generally how I view testimony coming out of the CIA, right? Naira was a 15-year-old who they put in front of the Congressional Human Rights Caucus. She lied about events that were occurring in Iran in order to foment war. In their rationale to back Kuwait in the Gulf War, it's what sparked the Gulf War, and this is a false testimony. She lied, and so it's very easy for me to believe that the CIA is going to put false testimony inside of us. And so let's just quickly, because they're preying on your emotions, right? Like that your emotional state is what their independent, according to independent estimates, probably Adrian Zen, right? Human rights groups, like who? The policy flows from China's president, yup, First House, who fled, the media, like where's their sources? Where's their sources? It's impossible, yeah, where's their sources? Adrian Zen's, right? Already, boink, there you go. CIA asset. Adrian Zenz is a far-right Christian evangelical who has said he is on a mission sent by God to destroy China. Real credible. Lots of credibility there. No job. Chinese men. Okay. Like, this is just storytelling, right? Like, they're telling a story, and you can tell a story all you want if it's coming out of a CIA asset, right? The Uyghurs. And is this literally their only source? Is this the only source that they're actually providing? Like, human rights groups, like who? Like, isn't it weird how they can show us, like, crystal clear satellite imagery, but they can't show us the displacement of several million people, right? Like, imagine that. Like, I can go to the Gaza Strip, right? I can go to the Gaza Strip, and I can, like, zoom right down on in, right? I can zoom right down on in, right? And if you really, really get far enough, you can literally see, like, the rubble, the destruction of this place in very clear and serious ways. You can literally see the, like, you can see the coastal borders. Anyway, this is taking up tons of time. So, you're telling me that you can capture through satellite imagery, like crystal clear images of the tops of buildings, but you can't seem to find several million people being rounded up in a systemic labor camp, systemic rape situation. Like, we're talking about, like, the official number that comes out of Adrian Zenz is 8 million people. Like, that's a massive relocation. And you're telling me you got these satellites going up, you can't seem to capture any of that, right? Oh, but you can show me the tops of buildings. Yeah. Sources. And they just, like, the grisliness, right? The grisliness. Sources. That, like, oh, here you go. In separate testimony to the Uyghur Human Rights Project, CIA organization, like, women were forcibly fitted with you. Yeah, okay. Like, this grisly. Oh, the Associated Press. Yeah, okay. Okay. Like, I've seen enough, right? Like, they're telling, like, a really great story. There's a CIA organization, by their own admission, right? The goal is to destroy everyone, she said. Everybody knows it. There's your point. Like, it's that classic sort of stenographers for the state that exists, right? You've got a reference to Adrian Zenz in here, who is a CIA asset. You've got a reference. The only source that they're actually giving us is a CIA organization and forced sterilization. Okay, let's click on this article, because this is, like, literally the only article that they're showing us, right? The only source, the only link they're showing us. So let's link it, and let's find the source here. Oh wait, go away. Here, I'm just gonna Adrian, right? There's Zenz all over this article. It's a CIA asset. This is how the CIA does it, bud. The CIA creates falsified documents and falsified testimonies, and then they funnel them into smaller level reporters, which are all CIA funded, Radio Free Asia, these sorts of things. And then AP, Associated Press, and the BBC pick up those stories that are created by the CIA, and then they report on them as if they're factual, when it's complete falsification. And, like, this is your article, bud. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a well-told story, and it really plays on the heartstrings, especially if you have, like, a colonialist white perspective, right? And you're naturally scared of China and what it could do. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be. Like, China's a big force that's suddenly showing up on the world stage, right? It's fine to be skeptical, and it's fine to be concerned, but this Uyghur narrative, it's total fucking bullshit. Like, it's total fucking bullshit. They've sent in film crews. China is literally invited the UN to come take a look. Anybody, Pakistan sent diplomats, the World Bank sent diplomats. Anybody who has actually gone into this region and gone into these camps, these schools, have said that that's exactly what they are, vocational schools, that operate in a similar manner to the schools that were set up in France, right? Remember Charlie Hebdo, right? That whole thing, and it was like Islamic terrorists and all this. Well, what did France do? Well, it set up a series of schools to give these people an opportunity to integrate themselves into the French culture. Real fucking genocide. And I'm not trying to make fun of your concern. Like, I think it's fine to be concerned, but your sources suck. Like, your sources blow, right? And what's going to happen is the UN is going to go into this region. The UN's going to have a whole investigation. It's going to do it. It's going to come out and be like, yeah, these are schools akin to what's going on in France. And that's going to not be the end of it, obviously, but because people still walk around saying, look at Venezuela, when that's been almost completely debunked. White supremacy just means rural. I don't think so, Ward. I think that urban white supremacy definitely exists. And can be far more insidious and dangerous, because you can have entire, like, well-established institutions that are fundamentally white supremacist in their worldview. Sorry, I was talking for a long time and not looking, which is why it's completely okay to push anti-white propaganda, talk about white supremacy, because you're not allowed to discuss the J issue or J supremacy. I don't know what you mean with J, but I don't know what that means. Morris Berman doesn't blame Americans' leaders, he blames the people themselves. Says America cannot be salvaged and suggests you leave the country, which he did decades ago. I mean, there is some truth to that, right? That fundamentally it is a cultural issue, right? That if the people were demanding an end to segregation and racism and like the industrialized prison system and all that, that it would probably happen. But there's like an incestuous thing that happens where like the people are so gullible and so willing to kind of absorb anything, right? And so these institutions, these large-scale institutions, are fine with feeding them bullshit, and they're happy with eating it up. So it's like this incestuous thing. It always pays to remember that the United States is a very young culture, right? Only been there like, what, 200 years, right? Like, that's very young in a civilization kind of way. Like, the fact that these states are amalgamated and have stayed together for as long as they have, with very little breakage, is itself a minor miracle, right? And I think has a lot to do with World War II, honestly. I think World War II was a very like galvanizing moment, but that's starting to fade into the background now. So. I literally have to write their ethnicity in code so my comment doesn't get censored. So somebody somewhere tells a lie and you... I mean, I don't know what to tell you about, like, they're enacting Jim Crow legislation across the southern states. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know what evidence you need. Like, what do you genuinely need? Like, they're literally enacting legislation to regress the Civil Rights Act. Like... If you're not gonna think that that's a serious white supremacist threat, then I want to know what you think it is. Like, they're enacting legislation to make it harder for black people to participate in the political system. What is that? And I mean, so somebody somewhere, a very specific individual from a very specific institution, tells a lie, and you use that person to try and discredit everyone you disagree with. No, I use that person to discredit that person, and the usage of a liar to in a document discredits the document. You know this person's a liar, you know this institution's a liar, you know they're lying to you, and you're using it as the foundation of your storytelling, right? Like, it's like building a house, but the foundations are completely rotten, right? So it doesn't matter how nice the house is built, right? You can build an immaculate house with beautiful beams and buttresses and all this kind of stuff, but if the foundations are rot, the house falls down, right? Whether you like it or not. And you can walk around and be like, oh, but look at this is so nice. And look at that, that's so nice. And look at this is so nice. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. The foundations are rotten, right? That's why if you base what you are doing on a lie, it will not work. Fundamentally, it will not work. Because if the foundations are rotten, the whole thing comes down. And when they refer to Adrian Zenz, the Uyghur World Congress, the CIA, fundamentally, and the CIA has admitted that its role in the world is to deceive people. There's a really great quote that comes out of a former CIA, head of the CIA. It says, we'll know our mission is complete when everything the American public believes is wrong. That's from the former head of the CIA. Like, you cannot trust these people. You should not trust these people. And if you do trust these people, then you're the fool. Very simple. Yeah, you want to see a genocide? Look at the border between Mexico and the United States. Yeah, I don't even bring that up. Like the ICE detention centers, right? Like the shit that's going on in the ICE detention centers, which we have photos of, we have evidence of, we have like our own people coming out and saying like this is happening, right? And yet, absolutely nothing. But oh yeah, the Uyghur genocide, that's something we need to pay attention to. Absolutely, how do you know, travel work, look up the company working, Tech, all engineering, we specialize in satellite tech. Any idea is just one respected zone, and it's still only captured. Well, okay, then do it. Like, we're talking about the United States here. We're talking about the largest military force on the planet. Then do it. I don't know what to tell you here, but it's just very convenient, I think. There are tens of thousands of people at the re-education school that have some problems with their thoughts. Yeah, of course they have problems with their thoughts. They're going into the transit system and murdering people. They're massacring people. Like, literally watch an interview with some of these guys, right? They're literally standing in front of you saying, I will, if I can get some dynamite and strap it to myself, I'm going to run into a building and blow it up for the glory of Allah, right? That's where they're at, dude. Like, come on. Yeah, let's just bomb them, actually, really. Do you believe that there are many black white supremacists? I don't know enough about the subject to comment. If I type out what I mean by J, my comment will get censored. It's literally how much power they have. It's the perfect demonstration of what I'm trying to say. Then I can't respond. Oh, J means Jew. Truth seeker is an anti-Semite, likely a Nazi. Oh, okay. I was getting that vibe, so I'm not going to pay attention to you anymore, bud. I wonder what you qualify a white supremacist as. I mean, if you are actively attempting to suppress a race of people, you are probably a white supremacist. So if you are actively attempting to enact legislation that is going to make it harder for black people to engage in your system, you are probably a white supremacist. Like, I think it's very clear, right? Like, if you are working to suppress a race of people, you are a white supremacist. Keep confusing the Democrats are the white supremacists, the Republicans are one in opposition to those racist policies. I mean, I don't really care about the Democrat-Republican because they're allies, right? The Democrats and the Republicans work together, right? That they are on the same team, and that team is team corporate. They don't necessarily, like, so it doesn't, so yeah, you'll find Democrats who are on that side, and then you'll find Republicans who are on this side, and you'll find, and it all ends up being a suppression of black people, right? So those two organizations are pretty hand in hand. Cali removes civil rights law. Democrats, okay. But again, Axel, that's not really, I don't really, like, you're gonna find it on both sides of the aisle. It's just the Republicans are the most obvious, right? Like, there's, I don't have it offhand, but there's, like, Republican governors putting forward this legislation. Like, this shit is real, and saying, oh, well, it's the Democrats, like, it doesn't matter to me. I don't know if this is an accurate statement of what critical race theory represents. Anyway. Like, I'm just trying to say, Bud, that, like, saying, but it's the Democrats, it doesn't work. Like, it's not an argument. Like, it's, then name one single racist policy, just one. I mean, oh my God, Bud. Oh my God, Bud. I mean, the mass incarceration, right? The fact that this is a book by Michelle, Civil Rights. The book discusses race-related issues, mass incarceration. Like, you can literally just talk about mass incarceration, right? The mass incarceration system that exists in the United States, predominantly filled with black people, right? Largely a black population. Like, I mean, and they're of course doing this because they can enact slavery again. Like, I'm not really from a Republican in the last 50 years. I got a real Shapiro in here. Okay. Like, yeah, the war on drugs. Oh, that's a good one. Actually, Ward, there you go. That's a really, really good one. Nixon aid war on drugs. So this is a former Nixon aide, right? Aide says Nixon war targeted blacks and hippies. Where's the quote? You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Is the war on drugs ongoing? Does the DEA still exist? Right? Are these ICE detention centers still in existence? Like, from his mouth. This is Jim Crow is a Democrat. I mean, so like 100 years ago, like okay, that's fine. There's no reason for a poor worker to be a right winger unless corporate propaganda is involved. It's in the common sense of a poor worker to left wing, and it's human nature to feel empathy. Yeah, the president calling countries African and Asian countries shitholes. Yeah, exactly, Robin. Okay, guys, I'm going to shut this stream down a couple of minutes early because I super have to pee. Good conversation, though, Axel. I'm glad that you were in. I like these kind of back and forths. Thanks for keeping me honest on the Belarus thing. I appreciate it. I'm glad to have you back, bud. Glad to have this talk. And I'm glad to continue this talk when I don't have to pee so badly. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. No, they definitely flipped, bud. Like, they definitely flipped. The Republican Party, like, literally freed the slaves, dude. Like, I mean, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, under Lincoln. Okay, anyway. You guys are all wonderful. You are divine beings, standing on divine energy, right? Don't let these billionaires convince you otherwise. Keep fighting the good fight. Good luck. We're going to need it.